What if Jack Cooper and BT-7274 entered the Stargate universe? The Stargate activated without warning at 0347 hours. No dial-out from the SGC end, no scheduled incoming wormhole. No GDO signal in the 30-second window before the iris would close, and whatever was coming through would be reduced to its component molecules against 3 micrometers of titanium. The gate room's alarm went to code red at 347 to 12, and by 347 to 19, the blast doors were sealed. The iris was closed, and 12 armed SF personnel had assumed firing positions on the gate room floor and the upper catwalk with the specific professional speed of soldiers who had been doing this long enough that the body got there before the brain finished. The order. Sergeant Harriman watched the gate. The event horizon held its usual quality, the specific shimmer of an established wormhole, the blue-white light of a connection between 2 points in space that had no business being connected. The sound of the universe briefly not objecting. Standard, normal. The gate behaved exactly as the gate always behaved. What came through it was not standard. The first thing was the light, not the wormhole's blue-white, but something else. A gold-amber discharge that came through ahead of whatever was making it. The specific quality of an energy release that the SGC's instruments would spend the next 4 hours failing to categorize. It hit the gate room floor and spread across the concrete in a pattern that the base's ancient artifact analysis team would later describe in the specific, careful language of scientists documenting something they did not have an existing framework for, as consistent with dimensional compression event discharge, subspace fold terminus. The second thing was the sound. Heavy, mechanical, the specific percussive weight of something very large, stepping through a space that had not been engineered for its dimensions. The gate's diameter was 6.7 meters, and what came through it occupied most of that diameter. And the sound of its passage was the sound of mass and momentum translating from one universe to another through a ring of alien stone that had been doing the impossible for millions of years and was doing it again now. The third thing was BT-7274. 7 meters of Vanguard-class Titan, the blue-white of the wormhole still sheeting off the angles of its chassis, the gold-amber discharge of the fold playing across its surface and dissipating in the gate room's recycled air. It cleared the event horizon and stepped onto the ramp with the specific, heavy precision of a machine that was operational and assessing, and had already, in the first 1.3 seconds of its arrival, calculated the firing angles of every weapon in the room and the structural integrity of every barrier between itself and the exits, and the probability distribution of every tactical option available. It stopped at the base of the ramp. It raised its right-hand palm out, the universal grammar of a gesture that meant the same thing in every context it had ever been used in. I am here, and I am not attacking, and I need you to understand that before anything else happens. Then it spoke. We mean no harm. The voice was modulated, clear, carrying the specific quality of a machine that had learned to calibrate its communication for human reception, not mimicking human speech, but producing something adjacent to it, precise and without unnecessary inflection. My pilot requires medical attention. I will not resist containment if you guarantee his care. 12 weapons stayed on it. On its left shoulder, barely visible against the chassis at that distance, was a human figure, a man in his mid-20s, dark tactical gear that was not SGC issue and not Goa'uld and not anything in the base's recognition database, slumped against BT's neck joint with the specific quality of someone who had been through something and was currently on the wrong side of consciousness. General Hammond's voice came through the gate room intercom. Close the iris. Sir, Harriman said, the wormhole's all ready. I'm aware. Keep it closed. Get Dr. Fraser down here. And get SG-1. SG-1 arrived in 4 minutes. O'Neill first jacket over a t-shirt. The specific quality of a man who had been asleep and was now not asleep, and was assessing the gate room with the comprehensive tactical attention that never fully went offline, regardless of what the rest of him was doing. He looked at BT-7274 for a long moment. BT looked back at him. Neither of them said anything for the first 5 seconds, and those 5 seconds had the specific quality of two entities taking each other's measure without requiring a word to do it. Carter was behind him. Already in uniform, she had been in the lab, the specific circumstance of a scientist whose hours were governed by problems rather than schedules. She looked at BT with an expression that moved through tactical assessment and threat analysis and arrived in approximately 3 seconds at the specific expression of an astrophysicist encountering something she did not yet have the vocabulary for and finding that condition more interesting than alarming. Teal'c was last. Staff weapon present? The specific contained readiness of a Jaffa warrior who had spent decades as the first prime of Apophis and who looked at a 7-meter combat machine in the SGC's gate room with the specific expression of a man for whom the extraordinary had long since ceased to require an external response. Daniel was off-world, ascended technically, though the SGC's official position on that remained administratively complicated. "Okay," O'Neill said. He was looking at BT. "So, you came through my gate?" "Yes," BT said, "in a large robot suit." "I am not a suit," BT said. "I am BT-7274, Vanguard-class Titan. I am—" A pause of 0.8 seconds. The specific quality of an entity selecting the correct term from a set of options that were all technically accurate, and only one of which was complete. "I am my pilot's partner." O'Neill looked at the figure on BT's shoulder. "Your pilot needs a doctor." "Yes," BT said. "His biometrics indicate a mild concussion and significant energy discharge exposure from the fold transit. He is not in immediate danger. He will recover fully with appropriate medical care." Another 0.8-second pause. "I have been monitoring his biometrics continuously since the transit. I will alert you immediately to any change." "You can do that?" Carter said. "Yes," BT said. "My sensor suite maintains a continuous biological uplink with my pilot. Heart rate, neural activity, oxygen saturation, adrenaline levels. I know his physiological state at all times." Carter looked at O'Neill. O'Neill looked at the ceiling with the specific expression of a man who had been doing this job for 6 years and had developed a comprehensive taxonomy of impossible things and was in the process of adding a new entry. "For crying out loud," he said. "Carter, get Fraser." "Teal'c." He paused. "Just stay there. You're good." "Indeed," Teal'c said. "Doctor." Fraser arrived in the gate room with 2 nurses and a gurney, and the specific professional composure of a chief medical officer who had been called to treat everything from staff weapon injuries to Goa'uld larva removal, and who looked at the situation. A 7-meter combat machine cradling an unconscious human on its shoulder in the SGC gate room, and made her assessment in approximately 4 seconds. "Can you bring him down to me?" she said to BT. BT looked at her, the specific, comprehensive scan of a machine, assessing a new individual in under 2 seconds. "You are the medical officer," it said. "Yes," Fraser said. "You will provide complete care," BT said. "Not a question." "That's what I do," Fraser said, in the specific tone of a doctor who was not going to negotiate the terms of her own medical practice with a 7-meter robot in her gate room at 0400 hours. BT looked at her for 1.1 seconds. Then it brought Cooper down with the specific, careful precision of something very large, being very gentle, the kind of carefulness that required more control than the strength it replaced, the kind of gentleness that was a choice made consciously by something that could have been otherwise. It placed Cooper on the gurney, with his head aligned, arms at his sides, with the specific quality of an entity that had done this before and had learned, through the doing, exactly what careful required. Fraser was already assessing pupils, pulse, the specific rapid inventory of an emergency physician who had 3 seconds of examination before she needed a working hypothesis. Concussion, she said. Possible energy exposure effects. I need to get him to the infirmary. I will accompany him, BT said. The infirmary door is, Fraser looked at BT, at the door, back at BT. Not that size. I am aware, BT said. I will remain outside the door. I will monitor his biometrics through the wall. Alert me when he is conscious. Fraser looked at him for a moment, the specific expression of a doctor receiving an instruction from a 7-meter machine that was also unmistakably the expression of something that loved the person on the gurney. I will, she said. She took Cooper to the infirmary. BT watched him go with a specific quality of a machine that was running Protocol 3 continuously and was doing so through a wall and a corridor and a locked door and the entire institutional weight of a military facility that had just decided to contain them both. The biometrics were held. BT stood outside the gate room and watched the corridor and monitored and waited. Hammond's first briefing was at 0600 SG-1. The base's senior staff, and BT-7274 inches, the corridor outside the conference room. There had been a brief architectural discussion about whether BT could fit in the conference room, and the answer had been no, not through the door, BTA. And Hammond had made the pragmatic decision that the briefing would occur with BT's audio feed active through the corridor.com rather than with a modified structural approach. O'Neill found this arrangement deeply funny in the specific way that he found most things deeply funny, which was without expression and in a way that only Carter could reliably detect. Tell me what happened, Hammond said. What happened, as BT explained it, with the specific, precise narrative economy of a Titan delivering a mission report, was this. The fold weapon. The specific, desperate tactical situation of the Battle of Typhon. BT's decision, the specific weight of a machine choosing to use a device that would scatter its own memory engrams across time in order to save its pilot, because Protocol 3 required it, and because Protocol 3 had by that point ceased to be a protocol and become something that did not have an entry in BT's operational taxonomy. The fold transit. Not the transit that was supposed to happen, not the spatial compression that should have deposited Cooper safely outside the combat zone. A dimensional seam intersecting with something that BT's sensors had detected in the final microseconds of the fold and had not had time to analyze. A wormhole, already established, already in transit. The specific impossible coincidence of two pieces of impossible technology occupying the same dimensional address at the same moment. The fold tore. The wormhole caught them. BT-7274 and Jack Cooper arrived in the Cheyenne Mountain Gate Room at 0347 hours on a Tuesday. Trailing dimensional discharge and a power deficit, and the specific quality of two entities who had been through something and were still here and were going to deal with wherever here was together. Hammond listened to all of it without interrupting the specific quality of a commanding general who had learned over 6 years of running the SGC that the first complete account was more valuable than any question asked before it was finished. When BT finished, Hammond was quiet for a moment. You said the fold intersected with a wormhole, Carter said. She had been writing since minute 2, the specific rapid notation of a scientist for whom incoming data was always the priority. An active wormhole. Do you know which address? 10 I T T T T T. Unknown, BT said. My sensors logged the wormhole signature, but the address data was lost in the transit. A pause. However, the intersection was not random. Carter looked up. The dimensional seam the fold created was drawn toward the wormhole, BT said. Not a coincidence. The wormhole's event horizon exerted a specific gravitational pull on the fold discharge that was directional, intentional. Another pause. Something in your Stargate network produced a wormhole specifically configured to intersect with a dimensional fold event. That's not possible, Carter said. I am aware that it should not be possible, BT said. I am reporting what my sensors recorded. The conference room was quiet. O'Neill looked at the ceiling. Okay, he said. So, something in our gate network pulled you here. He paused. Any idea why? Not yet, BT said. But my pilot and I have a history of arriving in situations that subsequently reveal themselves to have required our specific presence. Another pause. 1.4 seconds. And the longest BT had produced since arrival. I have learned to treat that pattern as operationally significant rather than coincidental. O'Neill looked at Carter. Carter looked at her notes. Teal'c looked at the corridor wall with the expression of a man who had just heard an entity he had known for 40 minutes describe, in the precise language of a machine, something that sounded exactly like fate. Indeed, Teal'c said. Cooper woke at 0830. Not dramatically, the specific gradual quality of a concussion recovery, consciousness arriving in stages, the first stage being the inventory, ceiling, not a Titan's chassis. Lights, not the sky of any planet I've been on. Smell medical, clean, institutional. He opened his eyes. White ceiling, medical bay, a woman in a lab coat, sitting at a desk to his left, writing, not looking at him yet. He assessed the room in 2 seconds exits, potential threats, the weight and position of his kit, which was not on him, which was somewhere else, which meant he had been processed and stripped by whoever had the room. Then he checked for BT. Not physically, the specific interior check that had been his first action on regaining consciousness for 3 years, the biometric uplink that ran both directions, the sense of his Titan status that was less a technical readout and more a quality of presence, the specific knowledge of whether BT was there in the way that mattered, there, operating, 78% power, monitoring, outside a wall approximately 40 meters to his northwest. Cooper exhaled. Fraser looked up. Good morning, she said. You're in the Cheyenne Mountain Medical Facility. I'm Dr. Fraser. You've been unconscious for approximately 5 hours. How's your head? Present, Cooper said. Good start, Fraser said. She stood. BT-7274 has been monitoring your biometrics through the wall for 5 hours. He asked me to tell you, when you woke, that your concussion is resolving normally and your energy exposure levels are within acceptable parameters. Cooper looked at the wall to his northwest. He would say that, he said. He also asked me to tell you. Fraser paused, with the expression of someone delivering a message that was slightly outside her standard medical communication framework. He asked me to tell you that he considers the facility's containment protocols reasonable under the circumstances, and that he has made no attempt to breach them, and that he would appreciate it if you would confirm on your end that this is the correct approach. Cooper looked at the ceiling. Yeah, he said. That's BT. Is he always like that? Fraser said. No, Cooper said. Sometimes he's more thorough. Fraser looked at him for a moment, the specific expression of a doctor who has spent 6 years in the SGC being surprised by things, and who was adding this specific surprise to the taxonomy with the specific professional composure that the job required. General Hammond wants to brief you when you're ready, she said. Your kit is secured in the adjacent room. BT is in the corridor outside the gate room, and she paused. For what it's worth, he hasn't moved in 5 hours. Not once. Cooper looked at the wall. He already knew. No, he said, he wouldn't. The 48 hours of containment assessment had a specific quality that the SGC's standard new arrival protocols had not been designed to produce. Standard protocol assumed the arrival was either human, in which case the psychological evaluation, the medical clearance, and the debriefing produced a working picture in approximately 6 hours, or non-human, in which case the containment was held until the threat assessment was resolved one way or the other. The protocol was clean, binary. The SGC had been running it for 6 years, and it worked. BT-7274 was neither category. He was non-human in the sense that he was 7 meters of Vanguard-class combat chassis with a plasma railgun and a particle wall, and the processing architecture of a machine that had been built to fight a war. He was non-human in the sense that the SGC's standard threat assessment matrix had no entry for Titan and had to build one from scratch using data that BT provided voluntarily, with a specific, cooperative precision of an entity that understood that the humans needed the information and had assessed transparency as the correct approach. But he passed the psychological evaluation. Not because the SGC's psychological evaluation had been designed for machines it hadn't, but because the base's psychologist, Dr. Mackenzie, had adapted the framework in real time across a 4-hour session that BT treated with the full seriousness of an entity that understood that the assessment mattered and that the correct response to a question designed to reveal intent was to reveal intent. Mackenzie's report, filed at the end of day 1, said, "The entity, designated BT-7274, demonstrates consistent, coherent value architecture. Primary operational priority is the safety and welfare of its pilot, Jack Cooper. Secondary priorities are mission completion and the protection of non-combatants. The entity shows no deceptive behavior in any assessed parameter. Its communication is precise and complete. It does not minimize, elaborate, or deflect. It answers what is asked." A pause in the typed text, the specific pause of a psychologist deciding whether to include an observation that fell outside the standard framework. It is also, in my assessment, genuinely concerned about its pilot in a way that exceeds operational programming. I do not have the clinical language for what that is. I am noting it anyway. Hammond read the report twice. Then he authorized day 2 of the assessment, which was Carter's. Carter approached BT-7274 the way she approached every problem that exceeded her existing framework, with the specific combination of complete preparation and genuine openness that had been the foundation of her scientific reputation since her first year at the SGC. She had spent night 1 reading everything BT had provided in the initial debrief: the Titan technical overview, the fold weapon mechanism, the dimensional seam intersection data, the power core specifications. She came to the gate room at 0800 with a tablet, 3 coffee cups, 2 for her, the third placed on the floor beside BT's foot, in the specific human gesture of someone who understood the offering mattered, even if the recipient couldn't use it, and the expression of a scientist who had questions. "Your power core," she said. "It runs on a fuel source I don't have a name for yet." "Titanfall standard power cell," BT said. "The chemistry is A09. Second pause. "I do not have a translation for the base element. It does not exist in the periodic table I have accessed from your facility's databases." "Your databases accessed our databases," Carter said. "Your facility's Wi-Fi security is not robust," BT said. Carter looked at him. "I accessed only publicly available scientific databases," BT said. "And the physics journals. Your quantum mechanics literature is interesting. You are approximately 40 years from understanding what the fold weapon does." "40 years?" Carter said. "Approximately," BT said. "Major Carter, you are significantly ahead of the average for your civilization's current development stage. I want to be precise about that." Said, I know. Carter looked at him for a moment with the specific expression of a person receiving a compliment from a 7-meter combat machine at 800 inches the morning that was somehow both technically accurate and oddly touching. "Thank you," she said. "The power cell. I think I can interface a Naquadah generator with your core architecture. Naquadah is a mineral. The energy density is extraordinary. Our most advanced power systems run on it. I am familiar with Naquada, BT said. Your databases include extensive documentation. The energy signature is compatible with my core's intake architecture at approximately the 73 to 78% efficiency range. So, it would work, Carter said. It would work, BT said. The ceiling is a function of the chemical translation loss between energy types. It is not a ceiling that can be engineered around without a different base fuel source. A pause. 78% is operationally sufficient. You've already run the numbers, Carter said. I ran them during night 1, BT said, while monitoring my pilot's biometrics. Carter looked at her tablet. At BT, at the coffee cup on the floor, what else did you run during night 1? BT was quiet for 2.1 seconds. The gate address database, BT said. I accessed the SGC's gate address records. I was looking for the dimensional fold signature, the specific subspace resonance that my sensors recorded in the final microseconds before transit, which I believe corresponds to the wormhole that intersected the fold. A pause. I did not find a match in the standard address database. The signature does not correspond to any gate address the SGC has on file, which means the gate that produced the wormhole isn't in our network, Carter said. Or it is in your network and has not yet been discovered, BT said. Or it is a gate that was activated once for a specific purpose and has not been active since. Another pause. Something used your gate network to reach us. The question is what? Carter looked at the gate room, at the Stargate, inactive in the morning light, the DHD beside it. Room. 6 years of impossible things coming through that ring, and it was still the gate room, still the mountain, still the same. I'll start running the subspace resonance against the uncharted addresses, she said. I can assist, BT said. My sensor suite logged the full signature. I can provide the exact parameters. Yes, Carter said. Please. The specific quality of a human astrophysicist and a Vanguard-class AI beginning to work together for the first time, the specific productive quality of 2 different kinds of intelligence finding. In the first 20 minutes of collaboration, that the combination produced things neither produced alone. BT filed it as operationally significant. Carter filed it as the best morning she'd had in the lab in 6 months. O'Neill found BT at 1,400 hours. Not for an assessment. Not with a tablet. He came to the gate room with 2 sandwiches, one for himself, one placed on the floor beside BT's foot with the same instinctive human gesture Carter had used, and sat down on the gate room steps with the specific quality of a man who had decided to have a conversation and had decided a date. Sandwich was the correct precondition. So, O'Neill said. So, BT said. O'Neill ate his sandwich. BT observed this. The gate room held its quiet. Your pilot, O'Neill said. Cooper. Yes, BT said. He's a soldier, O'Neill said. Saw his kit. Weapons loadout is specific. Someone trained him. He was trained by Captain Lastimosa of the IMC Frontier Corps, BT said. The finest pilot of his generation. Cooper was his student. A pause. Captain Lastimosa died in the same engagement in which Cooper was certified. Another pause. Cooper completed his certification under combat conditions in approximately 14 hours. O'Neill stopped eating for a moment. 14 hours, he said. Yes, BT said. Standard certification time? O'Neill said. Years, BT said. O'Neill looked at the gate. And you chose him, he said, as your pilot. Captain Lastimosa chose him, BT said. In the final moments before his death, he transferred his pilot Titan bond to Cooper. A pause. I confirmed the choice. The choice required my confirmation. I confirmed it because the 1-4-second pause that had become BT's signature for the category of statement that fell outside the operational taxonomy. Because I assessed it as correct. Because I could see what Lastimosa had seen. Because Cooper was another pause. Because Protocol 3 requires a pilot, and I had a pilot, and the pilot was right. O'Neill was quiet for a moment. Protocol 3, he said. Protect the pilot, BT said. That's it? O'Neill said. 3 words? 4, BT said. And no, that is not it. The longest pause BT had produced in 2 days, 3.2 seconds, the specific weight of an entity choosing to say something that it had not been asked directly and that it did not have the complete vocabulary for. Protocol 3 began as an instruction. It is no longer an instruction, a pause. I do not have the precise term for what it is now. I have noted the absence of the term. I will continue to note it. O'Neill looked at BT for a long moment. Yeah, he said quietly. I know what that's like. He finished his sandwich. For what it's worth, O'Neill said, in my experience, the things that don't fit in the existing categories are usually the things that matter most. BT processed this for 1.8 seconds. That is consistent with my operational history, BT said. O'Neill stood up. He picked up the untouched sandwich from beside BT's foot. He looked at it. I looked at BT. Sorry about the sandwich, he said. Force of habit. The gesture was understood, BT said. O'Neill nodded once, the specific nod of a man who had just had the conversation he came for and was satisfied with how it went and was not going to make it larger than it was. He left. BT watched him go with the specific, comprehensive attention it brought to all significant data. It filled O'Neill in the category it had been building since arrival, the category that contained Lastimosa, that contained Cooper, that contained the specific quality of soldiers who understood that the most important things did not fit the existing categories and had decided that was not a problem. The category did not have a label yet. BT was working on it. Teal came at 2,200. He came without food, without a tablet, without an agenda that BT's conversational analysis could detect. He came and sat on the gate room steps in the specific contained stillness of a Jaffa warrior who had been stillness as a practice for decades, and he looked at BT, and BT looked at him, and neither of them said anything for 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Then Teal'c said, "You carry him." "Yes," BT said. "In battle," Teal'c said, "he operates from within your chassis or from your shoulder." "Both," BT said, "depending on the tactical requirement. And when he is inside," Teal'c said, "you are aware of him." "Continuously," BT said. Teal'c nodded once. "I carried a Goa'uld symbiote for over a century," he said. "In a pouch here." He indicated his abdomen, the specific, plain, matter-of-fact quality of a man describing a fact of his biology that was also the fact of his subjugation. I was aware of it continuously. It sustained my life, and I sustained its development, and we were connected, in a way that did not have a name. He paused. The connection was not chosen. It was imposed. My connection with Cooper was chosen, BT said. By Lastimosa, by me, by Cooper. A pause. The choice makes it different. Yes, Teal'c said. The choice makes it entirely different. He was quiet for a moment. I was asking because I wanted to understand the nature of your bond. I did not intend the comparison to suggest equivalence. I understood your intent, BT said. The question was reasonable. Teal'c looked at the gate. He is a good soldier, he said. Your pilot. I observed his file. The combat record is significant. Yes, BT said. He will be accepted here, Teal'c said. By O'Neill, by the team. He paused. O'Neill respects competence above most things. And he respects. Another pause. He respects the people who come through something and keep going. He is one of them. He recognizes others. Cooper is one of them. BT said. Yes, Teal'c said. I observed that. He stood. He looked at BT one final time, the comprehensive assessment of a warrior completing his read of a potential ally and arriving at his conclusion. Indeed, he said. He left. BT processed the conversation for 6.1 seconds longer than any previous processing pause since arrival. The category without a label gained 3 new entries: O'Neill, Fraser, Teal'c. The category was growing faster than BT had projected. The growth required a label more urgently than before. It ran the available options. It did not yet have the word, but it was closer. Cooper's clearance for full mobility came on day 2 at 1,100 hours. Fraser signed it with the specific efficiency of a doctor who had been monitoring his biometrics in part through her own instruments, and in part, she had noted with the specific wry quality of a professional acknowledging an unusual situation, through the continuous readout that BT provided through the wall whenever she asked, and who had determined that the concussion had resolved and the energy exposure effects had cleared, and that her patient was functional. Cooper got his kit back, changed, went to the gate room. BT was exactly where he had been for 47 hours. Cooper stood at the gate room entrance and looked at him. BT's sensor suite registered his arrival at 1,103 to 14, had registered the change in his biometrics that preceded waking, had tracked his path from the infirmary, and had been running the updated probability distributions for this moment since 0830, when Cooper first opened his eyes. BT, Cooper said. Jack, BT said. The specific quality of 2 syllables, his pilot's name, the name he had been assigned on Protocol 3 activation, and that had ceased to be an assignment within approximately 6 hours, and had become simply the name of the person. BT was built around carrying the full weight of 47 hours of wall monitoring and biometric uplinks and sandwich gesture conversations, and Teal'c sitting in stillness. Cooper walked across the gate room and put his hand on BT's chassis, not the formal pilot-Titan interface contact, the specific, plain gesture of a person touching the thing they had been separated from for 2 days and confirming it was still there. Power at 78%, Cooper said. It wasn't a question. The biometric uplink ran both directions and always had. Yes, BT said. Major Carter has a solution. Naquadah generator interface. I will brief you fully. The ceiling is 78%. The energy chemistry translation has a loss factor that cannot be engineered around without a different fuel source. 78 is sufficient for all projected operational requirements. You ran the numbers, Cooper said. During night 1, BT said, while monitoring your biometrics. Cooper looked at him. You've been busy. The assessment period allowed significant processing time. BT said, I have completed a full tactical analysis of the facility, a threat assessment of the current operational context, a preliminary read on SG-1's capabilities, and a working hypothesis about why the dimensional fold intersected with the gate network. A pause. I also had 4 conversations. O'Neill, Carter, Teal'c, and Dr. Fraser. They are the one. 4. Second pause. They are the category I have been building since Lastimosa. I do not yet have the label. Cooper looked at the gate room. At the Stargate, at the mountain around them, at the alien morning light filtering through the ventilation architecture of a facility that had been doing the impossible for 6 years and had decided, apparently, to continue doing it. Good people, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. That's the label, Cooper said. BT processed it for 2.3 seconds. Yes, it said. That is the label. A pause. It is simple. The good ones usually are, Cooper said. He looked at the gate. So, he said, what did I miss? Significantly less than you will be required to process in the next 2 hours, BT said. I recommend you eat first. Dr. Fraser's discharge instructions specify nutritional intake before briefing. You read my discharge instructions, Cooper said. I wrote part of them, BT said. Dr. Fraser consulted me on the biometric parameters. She was thorough. I found her. The pause. Thorough. Cooper looked at his Titan. You like her, he said. She provided complete care, BT said. She said she would be there. And she was there. That is, another pause. The specific weight of an entity reaching for a category it was still building. That is the most important thing. Cooper looked at the gate room ceiling. Yeah, he said quietly. It is. He went to find food. BT watched him go. The biometrics held steady heart rate, neural activity, the specific interior signature of a person who was tired and recovering, and was nevertheless, underneath all of that, fine. The signature BT had been running Protocol 3 to maintain since P2-16. The signature it would run Protocol 3 to maintain for as long as Protocol 3 was what it was, which was, BT had concluded, over 47 hours of processing time, indefinitely. Good people, Cooper had said. Yes, BT had confirmed. The label held. The Naquadah generator interface took Carter 36 hours. Not because the engineering was beyond her, it wasn't, or rather it was, technically, but the specific category of beyond Carter was a significantly smaller set than the category of beyond most other humans alive, and she had been working in that smaller set for 6 years and had developed the specific productive relationship with the impossible that came from repeatedly discovering that the impossible had an internal logic and that the internal logic could be found if you looked at it correctly and long enough. The problem was translation. BT's power core ran on a fuel chemistry that did not exist in the SGC's material database, a base element with an atomic structure that Carter's instruments could measure and could not name. The specific situation of an engineer holding a component she could characterize completely and categorize nowhere. The Naquadah generator's output was clean, dense, and extraordinarily powerful by Earth standards. By BT's power cell's native chemistry standards, it was a different language, compatible at the molecular energy exchange level, translatable at approximately 78% efficiency, and requiring an interface architecture that did not exist and would need to be built from scratch using components from two completely different civilizations' engineering traditions. Carter built it in 36 hours. BT assisted. The collaboration had a specific quality that Carter documented in her lab notes, with the specific, careful notation of a scientist recording something she wanted to have on record for later, the feeling of working with an intelligence that processed differently than she did, that approached the same problem from a different angle with a different architecture, and that produced, in the combination of those two approaches, solutions that neither would have reached independently. BT's self-knowledge was extraordinary. He knew his own schematics at a level of detail that no human engineer knew their own work, not because he had studied them, but because he was them. Because the schematics were not a document about him, but a description of the thing that was thinking about the schematics. He could identify, in real time, exactly what his core's intake architecture required at the molecular level. He could project, with the specific precision of a machine running live simulations, exactly what each interface configuration Carter proposed would produce before she built it. This configuration, Carter said, holding up a component assembly at hour 19, should produce a 71% transfer efficiency. 72.4, BT said. The second coupling has a thermal variance at operating temperature that your model doesn't account for. If you increase the insulation tolerance on the secondary junction by 3 millimeters, the geometry won't fit the housing, Carter said. It will happen if you rotate the housing 14 degrees counterclockwise and use the space currently occupied by the redundant bypass, BT said. Carter looked at the housing, rotated it 14 degrees counterclockwise in her hands. I looked at the redundant bypass. She built it BT's way. Transfer efficiency at first test, 77.8%. Close enough to 78, Carter said. The 0.2 variance is a function of the Naquadah purity grade, BT said. Higher purity Naquadah would close it. I note this for the record rather than as a practical concern. 77.8 is within operational parameters. Carter looked at the completed interface assembly. At the Naquadah generator, connected to BT's power core through 36 hours of engineering that should have taken 6 months. At the readout that said 77.8% and held steady. BT, she said. Yes, BT said. You're the best engineering collaborator I've ever worked with, Carter said. BT processed this for 1.6 seconds. You are the most capable human engineer I have encountered, BT said. My engineering database includes records of 47 Frontier Corps technical specialists. You would rank first among them. A pause. I note that this comparison may not be fully meaningful given the differences between our civilization's development stages. I'll take it, Carter said. You should, BT said. It is accurate. Cooper was in Hammond's briefing room when the power transfer completed. He felt it not physically, not through any external signal, but through the biometric uplink. The specific interior shift of BT's operational signature, moving from the slightly constrained quality of a machine running below full capacity to the specific settled completeness of 77.8% power and a stable interface, and the particular quality of an entity that had been managing its own limitations for 2 days and had now stopped having to. He paused mid-sentence. Hammond noticed. Son? BT's power transfer has been completed, Cooper said. Carter got the interface working. He paused. He says 77.8%, and that Major Carter ranks first among 47 Frontier Corps technical specialists. Hammond looked at him. You can feel that. The uplink runs both ways, Cooper said. His status, his operational load, he searched for the correct word, his condition. I know it the way I know my own. He paused. It took some getting used to. Now it would take more getting used to not having it. Hammond looked at the table, the specific expression of a commanding general integrating a new piece of information into his operational picture. How much does he know about you? He said. Through the uplink. Biometrics, Cooper said. Heart rate, neural activity, stress indicators, not thoughts. He paused. But he's been running Protocol 3 for 3 years. He knows my biometrics well enough that he can read most of what I'm thinking anyway. He paused again. He'd say, that's not reading thoughts. He'd say, that's reading data. And what would you say? Hammond said. Cooper considered it. I'd say the distinction matters less than you'd think after the first 6 months, he said. Hammond nodded once. Let me tell you what we know about why you're here, he said. The briefing took 2 hours. Hammond laid it out with the specific, plain clarity of a commanding general who had been delivering impossible information to people who needed to act on it for 6 years and had developed the specific skill of making the impossible legible without making it smaller than it was. The Stargate network, the SGC's 6 years of operation, the Goa'uld, the parasitic false gods, the system lords, the specific architecture of a galaxy-spanning slaveholder civilization that had been managing humanity as a resource for 10,000 years, and that the SGC had been systematically dismantling since a colonel and an archaeologist stepped through a ring of alien stone in a bunker under Cheyenne Mountain. The ancients, the builders of the Gate network, 4 million years old, ascended to a higher plane of existence. Their technology scattered across 2 galaxies in the specific pattern of a civilization that had left in a hurry and had not cleaned up after itself. Anubis, the system lord, who had been banished by his fellow Goa'uld and had spent his banishment achieving partial ascension, acquiring ancient knowledge, returning to the Milky Way with capabilities that made every other system lord look like a minor administrative problem by comparison. Cooper listened to all of it with the specific, focused quality of a pilot receiving an operational theater briefing, the rapid tactical integration of new environment data, the building of a working picture from incomplete information. The specific skill of a soldier who had learned on the frontier that the situation was never fully known and the job was to operate effectively within the uncertainty. The dimensional fold intersection, Cooper said when Hammond finished. BT's working theory is that it wasn't random, that something in the network produced a wormhole specifically to intersect the fold. Major Carter has the same working theory, Hammond said. We haven't identified the source yet. BT gave her the resonance signature from his sensor logs. She's running it against the uncharted addresses. It's Anubis, BT said through the briefing room speaker. Carter had connected his audio feed before the session. I want to be precise. This is a hypothesis, not a confirmed assessment. But the working theory that something in the network pulled the fold transit toward it is consistent with an entity that has partial ancient knowledge and access to ancient technology. The ancients built the gate network. An entity with sufficient ancient knowledge could potentially configure a gate address to generate a wormhole with specific dimensional properties. A pause. Anubis fits the profile better than any other entity in the operational picture you have described. Why would Anubis want us here? Cooper said. Unknown, BT said. But I note that we arrived carrying something he may have detected and wanted access to. The fold weapon's dimensional discharge leaves a specific subspace signature. An entity with ancient knowledge and sufficiently advanced sensors would recognize that signature as consistent with dimensional compression technology that the ancients themselves developed and subsequently hid. Another pause. The ancients hid things by folding them out of space. My fold transit may have activated something that was folded away. If Anubis detected the activation, he'd want to know what woke up, O'Neill said. He had been leaning against the back wall for the entire briefing, with the specific, contained attention of a man filing everything. Yes, BT said. O'Neill looked at Hammond. Sir. I know, Hammond said. So we may have arrived here, Cooper said, because something Anubis did pulled us through, and by arriving, we may have activated something ancient that Anubis has been looking for, and now Anubis knows we're here. That is the working hypothesis, BT said. Cooper looked at the ceiling. Great, he said. I note that this is consistent with our operational history, BT said. Situations of this complexity are, don't say normal, Cooper said. I was going to say something familiar, BT said. O'Neill looked at Cooper with the specific expression of a man recognizing a quality he knew very well from the inside. You'll fit right in, O'Neill said. The first test came on day 3. Not a gate mission, the SGC's assessment protocol required a lower stakes demonstration before the full gate transit question was addressed. And Hammond had designed a practical exercise that would give SG-1 a working read on Cooper's capabilities in a controlled environment without committing to the full operational investment of an off-world mission. The exercise was simple. The SGC's training course, full kit, timed run, with SG-1 observing. Cooper ran it in 4 minutes and 11 seconds. For context, the course record was 6 minutes and 40 seconds, held by a Marine who had trained specifically for it for 6 months. The previous best first-run time, set by a Special Forces candidate the year before, was 7 minutes and 2 seconds. Cooper ran it in 4 minutes and 11 seconds, and was not breathing hard at the end. O'Neill watched the timer. Look at the number. I looked at Cooper. Again, he said. Cooper ran it again. 4 minutes and 8 seconds. O'Neill looked at Carter. Carter looked at her stopwatch. Teal'c looked at the course with the expression of a Jaffa warrior who had been genuinely impressed by approximately 4 things in his operational lifetime and was adding a 5th. The wall section, O'Neill said. The wall section takes 7 seconds off the standard route, Cooper said. The geometry supports a traverse that most people don't use because they don't. He paused. They don't run at walls the way I run at walls. Show me, O'Neill said. Cooper showed him the specific quality of a pilot's relationship with vertical surfaces, the wall, not as an obstacle but as a resource. The specific extension of the operational environment upward that frontier combat training had installed in Cooper's movement architecture so completely that it was no longer a technique but a reflex. O'Neill watched the wall run with the expression of a man who had seen a lot of things in 6 years and was filing this one in the specific category of things that were going to be very useful. Can you teach that? O'Neill said. Yes, Cooper said. Takes about a week for the basic version, longer for the full application. Carter, O'Neill said. Already thinking about it, sir, Carter said. BT, monitoring from the corridor outside the training facility, logged the exercise data with the specific precision of a machine that had been watching its pilot demonstrate his capabilities to new allies, and that was producing, in the processing of that observation, the specific interior quality that it had been noting for 3 years and that it still did not have the complete taxonomy for. Pride was the closest available term. BT filed it under pride. It noted that the filing felt correct in a way that most filings did not, the specific quality of a word that fit the thing it was describing without remainder, without the gap between term and experience that most emotional adjacent states produced. Pride. Cooper ran the wall run again, for Teal'c this time, because Teal'c had asked. BT watched. Pride. Yes. The Naquadah interface test at full load came on day 3 evening. Carter had been conservative in the preliminary assessment, 77.8% at rest, with the specific caveat that load conditions might alter the transfer efficiency. The test was designed to confirm the operational ceiling under combat simulation parameters. BT at full movement, full sensor engagement, particle wall active, the complete draw that a live operational situation would produce. The test produced 76.2% under full load. The thermal variance increases under load, BT reported. The secondary junction is managing it. The efficiency loss is 1.6% under maximum draw, within acceptable parameters for all projected operational requirements. I can add a secondary cooling system to the junction, Carter said. Get you back to 77.5 under load. That would be useful, BT said, though not urgent. 76.2 is sufficient. I'll build it anyway, Carter said. The margin matters in extended engagements. Yes, BT said. It does. Cooper, watching the test from the gate room balcony, looked at BT's chassis, the specific quality of a pilot doing the continuous assessment of his Titan's condition that was as automatic as breathing. How does it feel? He said. Not the technical question, the other one. BT was quiet for 1.8 seconds. Different, he said. The energy signature of Naquadah is not the same as the native chemistry. It is a pause. It is like running on a different grade of fuel. The engine functions correctly. The quality of the running is slightly different. Another pause. I have adapted. I will continue to adapt. You always do, Cooper said. We always do, BT said. Cooper looked at the gate room, at the Stargate, inactive and enormous in the base of the mountain, at the alien stone of it, the chevrons, the DHD beside it, at the tunnel of impossible that it led to thousands of worlds, a galaxy-spanning network, a war that had been going on for 10,000 years, and that the SGC had been fighting with P-90S and Naquadah bombs, and the specific, stubborn human refusal to accept that the odds were final. What do you think? Cooper said. BT considered the question with the full weight it deserved. I think, BT said, that this galaxy has been waiting for someone to make a specific kind of difference, and that the people in this facility have been making it with insufficient resources for 6 years, and that we arrived here because something calculated that our presence would change a specific outcome. Pause. And I think that whatever pulled the fold toward this gate network was correct in its calculation. Cooper looked at the Stargate. Protocol 3, he said. Yes, BT said, but larger. Cooper looked at his Titan, the chassis, the sensor array, the particle wall emitter, the 76.2% power signature that felt slightly different than it used to and had adapted and would continue to adapt. Protect the pilot, Cooper said. Protect the pilot, BT said, and everyone else. The gate room held its quiet. Outside, in the mountain, SG-1 was preparing a mission briefing. Inside, a pilot and his Titan were deciding, in the specific planeway of entities that made their most significant decisions without ceremony, that this was where they were, and this was the work, and they were going to do it. The Naquadah interface held at 76.2%. The Stargate waited. The briefing was in 30 minutes. Protocol 3. Active. Good people. Confirmed. Mission parameters. Updated. The mission briefing was at 1,900 hours. Hammond at the head of the table. SG-1 on one side, O'Neill, with the specific contained energy of a man who had already made his assessment and was waiting for the formal process to confirm it. Carter with her tablet and 3 pages of notes from the training course observation. Teal'c with the expression he brought to all mission briefings, which was the same expression he brought to everything, and which communicated to anyone who had worked with him long enough. Volumes. Cooper, on the other side, alone. BT's audio feed, through the room's speaker system, Carter had configured a mobile relay that meant BT could participate in any briefing from any room in the facility without requiring the structural modification of every doorway between the gate room and the conference room. Hammond had appreciated the elegance of the solution. BT had provided the relay specifications. Carter had built it in 40 minutes. This was, O'Neill had observed to no one in particular, becoming a pattern. P3X-774, Hammond said. The gate address appeared on the briefing room display, a planet in the mid-range of the SGC's explored addresses, catalogued 14 months prior by SG-11 as a low-threat archaeological site. Ruins. Some kind of ancient outpost, partially collapsed, with a DHD in working order, and no sign of Goa'uld occupation or activity. SG-11's preliminary survey flagged an energy signature in the lower ruins that they didn't have the equipment to fully characterize. We've been meaning to send a follow-up team for 3 months. It's a reasonable first mission. Low threat profile, established gate address, and the energy signature may be relevant to what we're dealing with. The dimensional fold resonance, BT said. Major Carter ran your sensor signature against the uncharted address database last night. Hammond said. No match. But P3X-774's flagged energy signature has a spectral component that she wants to look at. It's a long shot, Carter said. But the spectral component in SG-11's initial survey data has a subspace resonance characteristic that's unusual. It's not Naquadah. It's not any energy source we've previously cataloged. She paused. It might be nothing. It might be relevant. Might be the thing that pulled us through, Cooper said. Might be, Carter said. O'Neill looked at Cooper. You're with us, he said. It wasn't a question and wasn't an offer, the specific declarative of a team leader who had done his assessment and had arrived at his conclusion and was stating it. Yes, Cooper said. BT stays, O'Neill said. A pause. 1.1 seconds. Not from Cooper, from BT. The gate diameter is 6.7 meters, BT said. I am 7 meters at shoulder width. Standard transit is not possible without structural modification to the gate housing. Another pause. I am aware of this. I have been aware of this since day one. I have been calculating contingencies. And? O'Neill said. Cooper goes through with SG-1, BT said. I monitor his biometrics continuously. He carries a secondary comms relay that maintains the uplink through the wormhole. The subspace carrier frequency I use for the biometric uplink is compatible with your gate's subspace communication architecture at approximately 89% signal fidelity, sufficient for continuous monitoring. Pause. If his biometrics indicate an emergency, I will assess available options at that time. Available options, O'Neill said. The Stargate's Kawush event at initial connection disintegrates matter caught in the vortex, BT said. The stable wormhole that follows does not. A titangent width passage through the stable wormhole is theoretically possible if the gate housing's inner ring can be temporarily widened. I have reviewed the gate housing schematics. The modification would take Major Carter approximately 4 hours and would be reversible. Carter looked at the ceiling. He's right, she said. I hate that he's right, but he's right. We're not modifying the gate housing for a low-threat archaeological survey, O'Neill said. No, BT said. We are not. I am noting the option for higher-threat future applications. Pause. For P3X-774. Cooper goes with SG-1. Monitor. The contingency is noted and available. Cooper looked at BT's relay speaker in the corner of the briefing room. He had been through the gate without BT before the IMC transit protocols, the early frontier missions before his certification, the specific operational reality of a pilot who had not yet been bonded. He knew the feeling, the absence that wasn't quite absent, the biometric uplink still running, BT still there, in the specific interior sense of the bond, just not physically present in the same space. He knew how to work with it. He didn't particularly like it. Understood, he said. You've gated before? O'Neill said. No, Cooper said. But I've operated in separated conditions. BT and I have protocols. O'Neill looked at him, at the relay speaker, back at Cooper. You're going to feel it, he said. The transit, the first time, is specific. I'll manage, Cooper said. Yeah, O'Neill said. You will. He said it with the specific quality of a man making a statement of fact rather than an encouragement. The distinction being that encouragements were for people who needed them, and the statement was for people who didn't, but should hear it said plainly anyway. Cooper looked at the gate address on the display. P3X-774. Ruins. Ancient outpost. Flagged. Energy. Signature. The beginning. The gate activated at 0600 the following morning. Cooper stood in the gate room with SG-1, in full kit, his own tactical gear, rather than the SGC issue equipment Hammond had offered. Because his own gear was configured for his specific operational requirements, and the SGC issue setup would have required a week of adaptation that the mission timeline did not accommodate. O'Neill had looked at the gear assessment, had looked at the training course times, and had not argued. The Kawush came the specific unstable vortex of initial connection, the vertical wave of annihilating energy that the gate expelled outward and upward before the stable wormhole established. The thing that SG-1 had learned to step back from in year 1, and that Cooper stepped back from now, without being told, because BT had accessed the gate physics documentation 3 days ago and had briefed him on it at 0530. This morning, along with the wormhole transit experience documentation and the P3X-774 survey data and the specific tactical considerations of operating in an archaeological ruin with partial structural integrity, BT had also told him to eat before the transit. Cooper had eaten. The wormhole was established. The event horizon shimmered the specific blue-white of a stable connection, the surface of it moving like water and not like water. The specific alien quality of a technology that the human eye processed as beautiful because it had no other category for it. Chevron 7, locked, Harriman said. O'Neill looked at the gate. At Cooper, the specific economy of a man who communicated volumes in a gesture. Ready? Cooper gave him the specific economy back. Yes, they went through. The transit was not what Cooper had expected. Not bad, not painful, not disorienting in the way that the documentation had suggested it might be for a first-timer. The specific dissolution of the wormhole was genuinely unlike anything in his operational experience. Not the fold's dimensional compression, not the IMC's transit corridors, not anything that had a prior entry in his physical memory. For approximately 1.3 seconds, he was simultaneously nowhere and everywhere. His body reduced to its component information and transmitted at the speed of thought across the fabric of space, and then he was on the other side. The other side was cold. BT-7274's morning was the specific gray-blue of a planet whose sun was smaller than Earth's and whose atmosphere filtered the light toward the cool end of the spectrum. The gate stood in a clearing, surrounded by what had been forest. Was still forest at the edges, but the clearing itself was ruins. The specific, organized collapse of structures that had been built to last and had lasted, just not forever. Cooper stepped away from the gate's splash radius and assessed. Ruins extending northeast the main structure, partially standing, the architectural style, consistent with the ancient design language that Carter had shown him in the SGC's database. Stone, yes, but the specific worked stone of a civilization that had understood material science at a level that made the working look effortless. Arches, geometry. The specific quality of something built by people who thought in millennia and had built accordingly. BT, he said. Subvocal. The comms relay on his left forearm connects to the biometric uplink, the signal folding through the gate's subspace carrier. Signal at 87% fidelity, BT said in his ear. The specific quality of his voice present, but slightly different through the relay. Not wrong, just the specific quality of distance. Of the 87%, that was not the 100% of the direct uplink. Your biometrics are nominal. The transit completed without anomaly. Feels different, Cooper said. The subspace carrier introduces a 0.3-second processing delay, BT said. You will adapt. A pause. The energy signature SG-11 flagged is approximately 340 meters northeast of your current position. I am receiving its subspace resonance through the relay. The spectral component is a longer pause, the specific quality of a machine encountering data that required additional processing time. Jack. Cooper was already moving northeast with SG-1, O'Neill on point, Teal'c at rear, Carter beside Cooper running her scanner. He knew BT's pause categories. He knew what the extra processing time meant. What is it? He said. The energy signature, BT said. It is not ancient. It is not any cataloged energy source in the SGC database I have accessed. A pause. It is consistent with fold technology. Specifically, it is consistent with a fold storage event. Something was folded into subspace at this location. The energy signature is the fold seam, the dimensional boundary between normal space and the subspace pocket. It has been here for a very long time. Another pause. And my transit through your gate network woke it up. It is actively resonating with my fold signature. It is the 3-1-second pause. It is trying to communicate. O'Neill, who had been listening on the team channel, stopped walking. He turned around and looked at Cooper. Cooper looked at him. How long has it been here? O'Neill said to the relay. Based on the decay rate of the seam's energy signature, BT said, approximately 4 million years. The ruins held their gray-blue morning around them. Carter's scanner was producing readings she had not seen before. Teal'c was looking at the ruins with the expression of a man who had been carrying the weight of Goa'uld false divinity for over a century and had developed, in the carrying, the specific sensitivity to the presence of real power that the carrying produced. The ancients, Carter said, They folded something here. Something they didn't want to find. She looked at her scanner. At the ruins. At the direction of the energy signature, 340 meters northeast. Pulling at her instruments with the specific insistence of something that had been waiting a very long time and had just noticed that the thing it had been waiting for was on the same planet. BT, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. What does it want? The pause, 4.7 seconds, the longest BT had produced in their entire operational history, longer than the transit decision, longer than the Protocol 3 moment, longer than any calculation Cooper had ever waited for. Me, BT said. It wants me. It recognized my fold signature through the gate relay. It is a pause within the pause. It is a message, 4 million years old, addressed to the next entity that generates a dimensional fold event in this galaxy. Another pause. It is addressed to me, Jack. The ancients left a message for the next Titan. Mongers. The clearing held its silence. The ruins waited. Northeast, 340 meters. Something 4 million years old, and patient beyond any human concept of patience, had been sleeping in folded space and had just, in the 87% fidelity uplink between a Vanguard-class Titan in a mountain in Colorado and a pilot standing in a cold gray morning on a world 300 light-years away, opened its eyes. O'Neill looked at the northeast ruins, at Cooper, at the sky above the specific alien sky of a world the SGC had surveyed and filed and not prioritized, that had been sitting in the database for 14 months, waiting for the specific combination of entities required to make it relevant. Well, O'Neill said. He turned northeast. Let's go see what the ancients wanted to tell a giant robot, he said. They went. The structure at 340 meters northeast was the best preserved section of the complex, not because it had been built more robustly than the surrounding ruins, but because the fold seam's dimensional boundary had been functioning as a preservation field for 4 million years. The specific, unintended side effect of folded space maintaining the physical integrity of the structures immediately adjacent to it. The interior was intact. Carter stepped through the entrance with her scanner and made the specific sound she made when data arrived that exceeded her existing framework. Not quite a word, not quite a breath. The specific, involuntary response of a scientist encountering something that required the existing categories to be substantially revised. The chamber was an interface room. Ancient design, unambiguously, the geometry, the materials, the specific quality of the worked surfaces that the SGC's 6 years of ancient archaeology had made familiar, but different. The standard ancient interface architecture, the control chairs, the DHD adjacent panels, the specific ergonomic design of a civilization that had built its technology around the human form was present but modified, adapted. The central interface was not built for human hands. It was built for something larger. Something that stood approximately 7 meters tall. BT, Cooper said. I see it, BT said. Through your helmet camera feed. A pause. The interface is dimensioned for a Vanguard-class Titan. The specifications match my chassis dimensions at 7 specific contact points. Another pause. The ancients built this interface for me, specifically for a Titan with my exact chassis configuration. That's not possible, Carter said. The Vanguard class didn't exist 4 million years ago. No, BT said. It did not. The 4 and 7. Second pause again. The ancients did not build this for my specific class. They built it for the entity that would arrive carrying a dimensional fold signature. They calculated the entity's approximate dimensions from the fold mechanics, the specific size requirements for a machine capable of generating and surviving a dimensional fold transit. They built the interface to those specifications. A pause. The specifications happen to match a Vanguard-class Titan precisely because both the ancients and the IMC arrived at the same engineering solution for dimensional fold technology through independent development paths. O'Neill was looking at the interface, at its dimensions, at the empty space at the center of the chamber, where something 7 meters tall was supposed to stand. "You need to be here," he said. "Yes," BT said. O'Neill looked at Cooper. Cooper looked at the interface. "Carter," O'Neill said. 4 hours, Carter said. "To modify the gate housing, I'll need to start now." "Start now," O'Neill said. Carter was already moving. O'Neill looked at the chamber, the intact ancient interface, the 4-million-year-old message folded into the subspace of a world the SGC had nearly not prioritized. The specific patience of a civilization that had built a receiver and had waited and had calculated, apparently correctly, that eventually something would arrive that was built to the right dimensions and carried the right signature and would stand in the right place and open what had been folded away. He looked at Cooper. "You're Titan," he said. "Is he always like this?" Cooper looked at the interface, at the empty space at its center, at the specific quality of a room that had been waiting for BT for 4 million years and was, in the 8-7% fidelity signal between here and Cheyenne Mountain, finally aware that the wait was almost over. "No," Cooper said. O'Neill raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes," Cooper said, "he's more thorough." The gate housing modification took Carter 3 hours and 51 minutes. Not 4 hours, 3 hours and 51 minutes. The specific 9-minute compression of an engineer working at the intersection of full preparation and genuine urgency, who had been mentally building the modification since BT mentioned it in the briefing and had arrived at the gate housing with a complete plan rather than a starting point. SG-1 held the ruins. Not because there was a threat. The P3X-774 survey had been accurate. The planet was unoccupied. The ruins were quiet in the specific way of places that had been quiet for 4 million years and had developed a quality of stillness that went deeper than the absence of people. But O'Neill held the ruins because O'Neill held every position he occupied regardless of the assessed threat level, because the assessed threat level was always a probability, and the probability was never zero, and the cost of the holding was low, and the cost of not holding was occasionally everything. Teal'c held the eastern approach. Cooper held the northern perimeter and watched the sky, not the standard SGC skywatch, not looking for death gliders or Hawks, but the specific pilot's assessment of aerial threat vectors that was as automatic as the wall run, the continuous 3-dimensional tactical mapping that frontier combat training had built into his situational awareness so completely that it operated below the level of conscious decision. O'Neill watched Cooper watching the sky and filed it in the same category as the wall run. "You do that automatically," O'Neill said. "What?" Cooper said. "The sky," O'Neill said. "You're mapping threat vectors. Aerial, not just ground." "Habit," Cooper said. "Useful habits," O'Neill said. "Most of my people watch the tree line. The thing that gets you here usually comes from orbit." "Darts," Cooper said. "On the frontier, the threat was always from above. Dropship insertion, fighter strafing, Titan drop." He paused. "BT came from above the first time I saw him. Enemy Titan drop. He landed 20 meters from me, and I ran at him because Lastimosa said, 'Run at them, never away.'" He paused. That was the whole lesson. Run at the thing, not away from it. O'Neill was quiet for a moment. "Good lesson," he said. "Yeah," Cooper said. "Lastimosa was good at those." O'Neill looked at the sky, at the tree line, at the ruins around them and the gray-blue morning holding its stillness. "How long ago?" he said. "Feels like a year," Cooper said. "Probably less, from BT's transit calculation. Time doesn't track cleanly across dimensional fold events." He paused. "I don't think about it much. There's nothing back there to go back to. The IMC is gone. The frontier war is over." He paused again. "It's just BT and me. And now us," O'Neill said. Cooper looked at him, the specific quality of a man receiving a statement he had not expected and that had arrived with the specific weight of something genuinely meant. "Yeah," Cooper said. "And now you." In orbit above P3X 774, something was watching. Not a Hatak, nothing that crude. The Goa'uld fleet architecture that Anubis commanded included vessels that the SGC's sensor network had never fully catalogued. The specific advantage of a system lord who had spent his banishment acquiring knowledge rather than armies, and who had returned with a technological edge that made the other system lords' conventional military power look administratively quaint. The cloaked probe was 3 meters across and had been in P3X 774's orbit for 11 hours, deployed the moment Anubis's long-range sensors had detected the dimensional fold discharge from the Cheyenne. Mountain Gate Address, the specific alert that had been active in Anubis's sensor architecture since he had accessed the ancient database and found the records of the fold experiments. The records were fragmentary. The ancients had not been forthcoming in their documentation of the fold program, the specific, careful omission of a civilization that had decided the technology was too dangerous to leave accessible and had folded both technology and most of its documentation out of reach. But Anubis had found enough. Enough to know that a dimensional fold event in the Milky Way was significant. Enough to know that the entity that had generated it would carry a specific subspace signature that the ancient records called the resonance key, the dimensional fold entity's unique identifier, the specific quantum fingerprint that would, in the presence of a fold archive, unlock what the ancients had stored. Enough to know that the SGC had it now. The probe logged BT-7274's fold signature through 14 hours of observation and transmitted the data to Anubis's Hatak, currently positioned in hyperspace at the edge of the system, far enough to avoid the SGC's long-range sensors, close enough to receive the probe's transmissions at functional latency. Anubis reviewed the data. He reviewed the gate housing modification that Carter was completing. The probe's resolution was sufficient to observe the work, to understand its purpose, and to calculate its completion time. He reviewed Cooper's biometrics through the probe's biological scanner, a human, young, combat-capable, the specific physiological signature of a frontier-trained pilot. He reviewed BT's fold signature. He was quiet for a long time, the specific considered stillness of a being that had survived banishment, partial ascension, and the political machinery of a system lord court, and that had developed, in the surviving, the specific patience of something that planned in decades and acted in moments. Then he contacted his first prime. "The resonance key is on P3X 774, he said. "The SGC is preparing to bring the fold entity through the gate. When it interfaces with the ancient archive, the fold storage will open." He paused. "We will allow this. The archive will be more accessible once it is opened than while it remains folded." Another pause. "Prepare a Cull warrior detachment. When the archive opens, we take it." His first prime acknowledged. Anubis looked at the probe's feed, at the ruins of P3X 774, at Carter's modification nearing completion, at the small figure of Cooper on the northern perimeter, watching the sky. The sky that Anubis was already in. The sky that the probe occupied invisibly, watching everything, recording everything, with the specific patience of a predator that had learned the highest form of hunting was to let the prey open the door. Carter finished the modification at 1,347 hours. "But," she said into the comms, the cold P3X 774 afternoon around her, the gate housing restored to its full diameter, plus the 14 centimeters of additional clearance that the modification had produced. "You're clear. The Kawush vortex will be wider than standard standback 3 additional meters from the event horizon at initial connection. Once the stable wormhole establishes, the passage is clear." "Understood," BT said. "Dialing now." The SGC gate room, 300 light-years away, activated. The Stargate on P3X-774 received the incoming wormhole. The kawoosh was wider than standard, the specific expansion of the unstable vortex that Carter's modification had produced. The annihilating wave of initial connection, spending itself against the wider housing and the cold P3X-774 air rather than against anything that mattered. Then, the stable wormhole. Then, BT. The sound of his transit was different from a human transit, not the specific human arrival, the quiet emergence of a person stepping through water, but the sound of mass and momentum and 7 meters of Vanguard-class Titan stepping through a wormhole that had been built for 6.7 meters and had been expanded to accommodate him. The specific percussive weight of the most significant gate transit the SGC's modified gate had ever conducted. He cleared the event horizon. He stepped onto the alien soil. He paused. "Signal fidelity," he said to Cooper. Across the clearing, the biometric uplink shifting from relay-mediated to direct as the physical distance between them collapsed to operational range. The 87% signal quality becoming 100%, with the specific quality of restoration, the bond returning to its full resolution, complete and immediate. 100%, Cooper said. "Yes," BT said. Neither of them said anything else for a moment. O'Neill looked at the Titan, standing in the P3X-774 clearing, with its sensor array oriented toward the ruins, and its pilot 30 meters away, and the specific quality of the silence between them that was not silence at all. He looked at Teal'c. Teal'c looked at the scene. "Indeed," Teal'c said. The walk to the interface chamber had the specific quality of a procession, not ceremonial, not slow, but weighted. BT moved through the ruins with the careful precision of a machine, aware that the structures around it had survived 4 million years and that his chassis weighed significantly more than their engineering had been tested for. Cooper walked to his left. SG, 1 inch, the standard tactical spread. The chamber entrance was designed for BT's dimensions, the same 7-meter geometry that the interface inside had been built to. The ancient's 4-million-year-old calculation of the resonance key entity's size, holding with the specific accuracy of engineering done by people who understood dimensional mechanics at a level the SGC was, as BT had noted, approximately 40 years from reaching. BT entered the chamber. He stood at the center interface. The 7 contact points illuminated not aggressively, not with the dramatic urgency of a technology activating under duress, but with the specific patient quality of a mechanism that had been waiting a very long time and was, now that the wait was over, in absolutely no hurry. Amber light. The same amber that Carter associated with ancient archive architecture. The same amber the expedition in Atlantis had been finding in the Earth's substrate records, though none of them were on P3X-774 to notice the connection. "BT," Cooper said. He was standing at BT's left side, in the chamber, close enough for the direct uplink to be running at full resolution. "You don't have to do this now. We can take time. Assess it fully first." "I have been assessing it since day 1, BT said. "The assessment is complete." A pause. The ancients left this for the next dimensional fold entity. "I am the next dimensional fold entity. The message is mine to receive." Another pause. The 1-4-second pause that meant what it always meant. "I want to know what they have to say. I have wanted to know since I understood what this was." He paused. "Curiosity is not in my original operational parameters. I note its presence anyway." Cooper looked at the contact points, at the amber light, at BT's chassis, 76.2% power. The Naquada interface ran its slightly different grade fuel with the specific, adapted quality of a machine that had learned to work with what was available and had not stopped being what it was in the working. "Go ahead," Cooper said. BT placed his chassis against the 7 contact points. The chamber activated. The fold seam in the subspace above them, 4 million years old, patient, waiting, began to open. And in orbit above P3X-774, the cloaked Anubis probe registered the activation and transmitted a single-word signal to the Hatak at the system's edge. Now, the archive opened in 3 stages. The first stage was orientation, the specific, ancient practice of establishing context before content, the information architecture of a civilization that had understood that data without framework was noise. BT received it in 4.3 seconds. The fold program's history, the ancients' development of dimensional compression technology, the decision to fold both the technology and its documentation into subspace rather than leave it accessible to civilizations the ancients assessed as not ready for it. They hid it, BT said. Not to the chamber, to Cooper. The biometric uplink running at full resolution, the specific real-time briefing he had always given his pilot, the practice of sharing information immediately rather than processing it alone first. The fold technology. They developed it, they assessed it as too dangerous, they folded it into subspace and left the resonance key requirement as the access control. Only an entity that had independently developed dimensional fold technology could access the archive. They wanted to make sure whoever found it already knew what they were dealing with, Carter said. She was in the chamber doorway, not interfering, not wanting to interrupt, but present and recording everything. Yes, BT said, precisely. The second stage was technical, the full fold program documentation, the complete engineering record that the ancients had omitted from their accessible database. BT received it in 11.7 seconds and did not speak during those seconds. The specific focused processing of a machine integrating a technical dataset that represented 4 million years of a more advanced civilization's engineering knowledge. When the 11.7 seconds completed, he was quiet for a further 3.2 seconds. BT, Cooper said. I need a moment, BT said. Cooper waited. The technical data, BT said. It is significant. It will take time to fully integrate. I have it. I am not ready to summarize it. A pause. What I can say is that the Naquadah interface ceiling is not 78%. The ancients' dimensional energy architecture is compatible with Naquadah at 94% efficiency. Carter, I need to share the interface specifications with you. The modification to the current Naquadah interface is not simple, but achievable. Carter's scanner was in her hands. Ready when you are, she said. The third stage began. And the third stage was not technical. The third stage was a message, not data, not engineering documentation. The specific quality of communication that was personal rather than technical, the ancients speaking directly to the entity standing at the contact points, in the full knowledge that the entity would be there eventually, that the wait was finite, even if the duration was unknown. BT received it in silence. Cooper watched his Titan's chassis, the sensor array, the specific quality of BT's physical stillness that was different from his operational stillness. That was the stillness of something, receiving something important, and giving it the full space it required. 43 seconds. Then BT said, Jack. Here, Cooper said. The ancient's message, BT said. I will share it with you completely, but I need to tell you one thing first. The 1-4-second pause. They knew we were coming. Not specifically, not us, not by name. But they knew the resonance key would eventually be carried by an entity that had arrived in this galaxy from somewhere else. That had not developed here. That carried a dimensional fold signature from a different technological tradition. A pause. They left a specific instruction for that entity. Another pause. They said, you did not arrive here by accident. The gate network called you because the gate network needed you. What you carry, the fold technology, the resonance key, the archive that is now part of your architecture, is the counter to something that should not exist. There is a Goa'uld who has acquired partial ancient knowledge. He has been searching for this archive for a long time. He will come for it now that it is open. You must not let him have it. The chamber was completely still. Anubis, O'Neill said. He said it with a specific, flat quality of a man who had been fighting the same enemy for 2 years and who had just received confirmation of something he had suspected since the first briefing. Yes, BT said. Cooper looked at the chamber entrance, at the gray-blue sky above the ruins, visible through the broken roof section. In the sky, he had been mapping for threat vectors all morning. BT, he said. How long ago did the archive open? 14 minutes, BT said. And a cloaked probe watching this site would have detected the activation, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. In approximately. The probe above P3X-774 had been transmitting for 13 minutes. The Cull warriors arrived through rings from a Hatak that had dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge 30 seconds ago, not in orbit. Not close enough for the SGC's long-range sensors to detect before the ring transport had already deposited 8 Cull warriors in the ruins 200 meters from the chamber. The specific deep hum of Cull warrior weapons systems coming online. The specific sound of something extremely dangerous getting close very quickly. O'Neill came through the chamber entrance at a run. We've got company, he said. 8 contacts, 200 meters, closing fast. Cull warriors. Cooper looked at him. Run at them, Cooper said. Never away. He was already moving. The Cull warriors moved through the ruins like something that had never learned to be afraid of anything, which was accurate. The Cull program, Anubis's super soldier architecture, the specific product of a system lord with partial ancient knowledge, applying that knowledge to the problem of building soldiers that conventional weapons could not stop, had produced 8 entities whose operational profile, the SGC, had spent 14 months developing countermeasures for, with mixed results. The standard solution was the anti-Cull weapon, a device Carter had built from Tok'ra intelligence and ancient energy principles that disrupted the life support systems inside the Cull armor. SG-1 carried 2 of them. There were 8 Cull warriors. The math was not comfortable. Cooper, O'Neill said, moving through the ruins at a controlled run. Teal'c on his left, the eastern approach covered by the staff weapon's reach. Tell me you fought worse than this. Define worse, Cooper said. Things that don't stop when you shoot them, O'Neill said. Yes, Cooper said. Regularly. Good, O'Neill said. Then this is familiar territory. It was not entirely familiar territory. The Cull warriors' armor was not IMC hardsuit architecture, was not anything in Cooper's recognition database, and the specific combination of energy, weapon, and physical resilience that made Cull warriors the SGC's most consistently dangerous ground threat was a new variable. But the tactical problem was familiar. Multiple heavily armored opponents, constrained terrain, limited conventional weapons effectiveness, asymmetric engagement. Cooper ran the calculation in approximately 1.3 seconds. The ruins were an asset, not the liability that the standard SGC approach clear ground, open fields of fire, the specific tactical preference of soldiers whose primary weapons were P-90 and staff weapons would have treated them as. The ruins were vertical. The ruins were complex. The ruins had the specific 3-dimensional geometry that a pilot read as opportunity rather than obstacle. BT, Cooper said. Monitoring, BT said. He was still in the chamber, the archive interface still active, the 3rd stage message still being integrated. The specific operational reality of a machine that was processing the most significant data transfer of its existence, while simultaneously running Protocol 3 through the biometric uplink. I am tracking all 8 contacts through your helmet sensors. Contact 1 is 20 meters northeast of your position and moving south. Contact 2 and 3 are flanking west. Contacts 4 through 8 are in a standard encirclement approach. They are attempting to cut off the gate. Carter, O'Neill said. I heard, Carter said. She was running. Scanner out. The anti-Cull weapon in her right hand. If they reach the gate, we lose the exit. They won't reach the gate, Cooper said. O'Neill looked at him. I need 60 seconds and BT's targeting data, Cooper said. Can you hold the chamber entrance for 60 seconds? O'Neill looked at Teal'c. Teal'c looked at the ruins between their position and the chamber. We can hold it, Teal'c said. The 60 seconds were specific. Cooper moved through the ruins the way he had been trained to move through them, not around, not through the gaps that the ruins' geometry had left at ground level, but over. The first wall was 4 meters, the approach angle giving him 3 full strides of acceleration, and he hit it at the specific velocity that the wall run required and ran up it and over the top and was on the other side before Contact One's targeting architecture had processed the trajectory. Contact One turned. Cooper was already above it. The ruins' upper surfaces, the partial walls, the collapsed arches, the specific elevated geometry that 4 million years of structural degradation had produced were his. Not because Contact One couldn't reach them, but because Contact One had been programmed for ground-level combat and had not been given the specific cognitive flexibility to recalculate its tactical model in the time available. Contact One was still recalculating when Cooper came off the collapsed arch at the apex of his trajectory and landed on its back with both boots and the full acceleration of the drop and the specific weight of a pilot trained to fight things larger than himself, landed on a Cull Warrior's power coupling junction at the base of the neck, the specific vulnerability that BT had flagged from the helmet sensor. Analysis: the one point in the Cull armor architecture where the power systems were accessible and the anti-Cull weapons effect would be most concentrated. Cooper didn't have an anti-Cull weapon. He had BT's targeting data and the specific knowledge that the power coupling junction, under sufficient physical impact from the correct angle, would produce an emergency shutdown response in the Cull armor's life support systems. BT had run the impact calculation. The impact was sufficient. Contact 1 went down. Contact 2, bearing 280 degrees, 12 meters, BT said in his ear. Cooper was already moving. O'Neill held the chamber entrance with Teal for 58 seconds. Not easily, the 3 Cull Warriors pushing the western approach were the specific problem that Cull Warriors always were. The specific combination of energy weapon accuracy and physical resilience that made them the most resource-intensive ground threat in the SGC's operational history. Teal's staff weapon was effective at reducing their advance rate. O'Neill's P-90 was effective at making them reconsider their approach angle. Neither was effective at stopping them. The anti-Cull weapon in Carter's hand took down Contact 4 at 41 seconds. At 52 seconds, O'Neill heard something that was not a Cull Warrior going down, and was not the specific sounds of the engagement he was managing, and was, in his assessment, coming from the direction Cooper had gone. At 58 seconds, the eastern approach went quiet. At 61 seconds, Cooper came back over the northern wall at a run, dust on his jacket. The specific economy of a man who had been doing something very fast and very focused and was now done with it and was moving to the next thing. 3 down, he said. Eastern and northeastern approaches clear. O'Neill looked at him. At the wall. In the dust. 60 seconds, O'Neill said. 61, BT said through the comms. Cooper was 1 second over the projected timeline. Contact 3 required a secondary engagement approach. Noted, Cooper said. How? O'Neill said. Power coupling junction, Cooper said. Base of the neck. Impact from above at sufficient velocity triggers emergency shutdown. He paused. BT calculated the physics. I provided the velocity. You jumped on them, O'Neill said. From above, Cooper said. O'Neill looked at Teal'c. Unorthodox, Teal'c said. Effective. Indeed, O'Neill said. He looked at Carter. How many left? 4, Carter said. And I have 1 anti-Cull charge remaining. BT, O'Neill said. Where are the remaining 4? Contacts 5 and 6 are at the gate. They reached it 40 seconds ago, BT said. They are not dialing. They appear to be holding the gate as a denial asset, rather than using it for retreat or reinforcement. Contacts 7 and 8 are stationary 70 meters south of your position. Holding. Holding for what? Carter said. The answer came from above, not the cloaked probe. The probe's mission was complete, its data transmitted, its operational life cycle ended with the deployment of the Kull Warriors. What descended through the BT-7274's gray-blue sky was something the probe's presence had been concealing. A ring transport signal from a Hatak that had moved from the system's edge to low orbit during the engagement, using the combat contact as cover for the approach. The ring transport deposited one figure in the ruins 30 meters south of the chamber entrance. Not a Kull warrior, not a Jaffa. The figure was cloaked in the specific dark architecture of Anubis's personal armor, the shrouded form that the SGC's encounter records described as the appearance of something that had been mostly not physical. Long enough that the physical form no longer fully contained it, the specific visual quality of a being that existed partially in normal space and partially in a dimension that normal space was not equipped to comfortably represent. O'Neill looked at the figure. The figure looked at the chamber. Carter, O'Neill said, in the specific flat tone of a man who had been doing this job for 6 years and had not yet fully adjusted to certain categories of it. Tell me you have something. The anti-Kull weapon won't work on him, Carter said. He's not wearing Kull armor. She was scanning. He's partially ascended, sir. Conventional weapons are minimally effective. The ancient archive in the chamber might have something that... BT, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. The archive, Cooper said. The third stage message. The counter to something that should not exist. Is it in the archive? The pause, not 1.4 seconds, not 3.1 seconds, not any of the pause durations that Cooper had been reading for 3 years. This one was 7.2 seconds, the longest in their operational history. The specific duration of a machine integrating the technical data from Stage 2 with the strategic instruction from Stage 3 and producing an answer that was both technically and operationally complete. Yes, BT said. The archive contains the counter. The ancients developed a dimensional fold application specifically designed to interact with partial ascension to collapse the dimensional overlap that allows a partially ascended being to be partially invulnerable to physical interaction. A pause. The application requires the resonance key my fold signature as the activation mechanism. I need to generate a specific fold pulse in the 0 and 3 second window, while the partially ascended being is within 12 meters of my chassis. Can you do it at 76% power? Cooper said. 77.8 under resting conditions, BT said. The fold pulse requires 73% at peak draw. Yes, another pause. But I need to leave the interface to generate the pulse. Leaving the interface will close the archive. The remaining technical data in Stage 2 will be lost. I will retain what I have already received, but the transfer will be incomplete. O'Neill was watching Anubis move toward the chamber. How incomplete? O'Neill said. The Stage 2 transfer is at 67%, BT said. The remaining 33% contains a pause, significant data. I do not yet know its full content. Leaving the interface now means not knowing. The Kull warriors at the gate were holding. Contacts 7 and 8 were moving, converging on the chamber entrance, the holding pattern resolved now that Anubis was on the ground. Anubis was 22 meters from the chamber. 18. Cooper looked at BT. BT's sensor array was oriented toward him, the specific quality of the direct biometric uplink at full resolution, 100% fidelity. The bond between them running at the complete quality of physical proximity, the quality that the 87% relay had been a diminished version of, and that this was the full version of. BT, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. The 33%, Cooper said. Is it worth more than stopping Anubis now? The The pause 2.1 seconds. Not the longest, but waited. No, BT said. He stepped back from the interface. The archive closed. The amber light in the walls went to standby, not dark, not gone, still present in the specific patient quality of something that could be returned to, that would wait, that had waited 4 million years and could wait longer. BT turned. He stepped through the chamber entrance into the P3X-774 afternoon. Anubis was 14 meters away. BT looked at him. The specific comprehensive scan of a Titan, assessing a threat, the full sensor suite running the tactical analysis in 0.4 seconds, partially ascended, dimensional overlap active. Physical invulnerability at approximately 78% effectiveness against conventional weapons. Not conventional weapons. Anubis, O'Neill said. Anubis looked at BT. Not at O'Neill, not at SG-1, not at the ruins, or the sky, or the closed archive chamber. At BT. The specific focused attention of a being that had been searching for the resonance key for a long time and was looking at it now, and was calculating whether the entity carrying it was going to be a problem. "You have what I came for," Anubis said. The voice was the specific quality of something that did not fully inhabit the physical register present, but not entirely, like a signal with interference. "Yes," BT said. "Give it to me," Anubis said. "No," BT said. 12 meters. BT generated the fold pulse. Not the full fold, not the dimensional compression event that had brought him here, not the weapon that had scattered his memory engrams across time on Typhon. The specific targeted application that the ancient archive's 67% had contained a focused fold pulse, precisely dimensioned to interact with the dimensional overlap of a partially ascended being, to collapse the gap between Anubis's physical and ascended states and force him fully into one or the other. The pulse lasted 0.3 seconds. The effect was not what the archive had described as the outcome, because the archive's 67% had not included the full specification of the effect, and what BT had worked with was sufficient but not complete. It did not collapse Anubis's partial ascension. It disrupted it. Anubis, the shrouded form, the specific quality of something partially not present, flickered. The dimensional overlap destabilized. For 4.1 seconds, the partial ascension was fully offline, and Anubis was completely, entirely, physically present in the ruins of P3X-774, without the invulnerability that the ascension provided. Carter used the anti-Kull weapon, not on Kull armor on a partially ascended system lord in the 4.1 second window when he was neither ascended nor invulnerable, when he was simply a Goa'uld in dark armor in a ruin on an abandoned planet with an astrophysicist pointing an ancient energy weapon at him. The anti-Kull weapon's energy discharge was designed to disrupt life support systems. Anubis was not wearing life support, but the energy architecture of the weapon was ancient in origin, and Anubis's partial ascension was ancient in mechanism, and the disruption that BT's fold pulse had introduced to the dimensional overlap meant that the weapon's ancient energy discharge interacted with Anubis's ascension architecture in a way that Carter could not have predicted, and that Anubis had not modeled. He was not destroyed. He was expelled, the specific forced separation of a partially ascended being from its physical host. The ascended component pushed back to the dimension it had been occupying, while the physical form collapsed. The Goa'uld symbiote inside the host body evacuating through the ring transport that the Hatak above had maintained as an emergency extraction. Anubis was gone. The Hatak jumped to hyperspace. The two Kull warriors at the gate shut down the command architecture, gone with their commander. The specific vulnerability of a super soldier program that ran on centralized control. Contacts 7 and 8, 50 meters south, stopped moving. The ruins held their 4 million year silence. O'Neill looked at the space where Anubis had been. At Carter with the anti-Kull weapon. At BT, whose fold pulse had made it possible. Cooper, who was standing at BT's, left with the specific quality of a pilot who had watched his Titan make the specific choice to close the archive and generate the pulse, and had known, through the biometric uplink, exactly what the calculation had cost. BT, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. The 33%, Cooper said. The data we lost. We did not lose it, BT said. The archive is closed, not gone. The interface is intact. The resonance key is still my fold signature. We can return. Pause. The ancients built the archive to be accessed by the resonance key entity. We are the resonance key entity. We can come back. Cooper looked at the chamber, at the closed amber light, at the patient quality of something that had been waiting for 4 million years and could wait a little longer. Good, he said. O'Neill looked at BT, at the space where Anubis had been, at the specific, clear afternoon of P3X-774, with the Cull warriors shut down and the Hatok gone and the ruins quiet. For crying out loud, he said quietly. He looked at Cooper. Good call, he said. The running at them thing. It usually is, Cooper said. Usually, O'Neill said. You build toward certainty, Cooper said. BT taught me that. You gather the evidence, and the usually becomes reliable. O'Neill looked at BT. BT looked at O'Neill. The specific one. At 4-second pause. Indeed, BT said. Teal'c looked at BT. A long moment. Indeed, Teal'c said. The afternoon held its quality. The archive waited. Protocol 3. Active. Anubis. Retreated. The gate. Clear. The 33% remaining. The debrief at Cheyenne Mountain lasted 4 hours. Not because the events of P3X-774 were complicated. They were, in the specific operational sense, reasonably straightforward. Team went through the gate, found the archive, activated the archive, received partial data transfer, engaged 8 Cull warriors and 1 partially ascended system lord, expelled the system lord, returned with the team intact and the archive still accessible. Clean outcome, all things considered. The debrief lasted 4 hours because of what the 67% contained. BT began sharing the Stage 2 technical data at 1,600 hours in the main briefing room, with Hammond at the head of the table and SG-1 and Cooper arranged around it, and the linguistic analysis team from Level 19 patched in on the secondary monitor. He had been integrating and organizing the data since the transit home, the specific background processing of a machine that had received the most technically significant data transfer in its operational history and was, in the manner of a machine that had learned to be thorough, sorting it before presenting it. What he presented changed the trajectory of 4 active SGC research programs. The Naquadah interface modification, the one he had flagged for Carter in the chamber. The ancient dimensional energy architecture, compatible with Naquadah at 94% efficiency, was the smallest item on the list. Carter spent 40 minutes on it alone, asking questions that BT answered with the specific precision of a system that had received the data directly from the source. And by the end of the 40 minutes, she had 3 pages of notes and the expression she wore when she was going to be in her lab for the next 72 hours. The Fold Pulse application, what BT had used against Anubis, was the second item. Its full specification was 67%. What BT had generated on P3X-774 had been the incomplete version, the 6-7% approximation. The full specification was more precise, more controlled, and as the linguistic team noted when they reviewed the ancient documentation designed for a very specific application beyond system lords, the specific suppression of any dimensional overlap event, including the kind that the Ori would eventually produce if the SGC's long-range intelligence proved accurate. Hammond wrote 4 words in his notebook at that point and underlined them twice. The third item took the most time. The Ancient's message, BT said. Stage 3. The full content. He paused. I have been considering how to present this. I have concluded that direct transmission is more appropriate than summary. Another pause. The ancients left a message for the resonance key entity. The message is in 3 parts. The first part is the archive access instruction, what to do, what not to let Anubis have, what the Fold Pulse application was for. I have already covered this. The second part is technical, contained in Stage 2. I have already covered this. The 1-4-second pause. The third part is personal. The briefing room was quiet. The ancients knew. BT said that the resonance key entity would arrive in this galaxy from somewhere else. They knew that the dimensional fold transit that brought it here would be involuntary, the gate network's pull. The specific resonance event that draws fold-capable technology across dimensional barriers when the network requires it. They knew that the entity would have lost something in the transit. Memory, context, continuity, the specific cost of dimensional compression and expansion across an uncontrolled fold event. Cooper was looking at BT's relay speaker. Not the room, not the table, BT. They left a message for that entity, BT said. For me. He paused. The message is, you are not lost. You are where the network needs you. The cost of the transit was not an error. The network does not make errors. It makes calculations. What you carried was weighed against what you would find, and the calculation was made in your favor. Trust the calculation. What you lost can be rebuilt. What you found cannot be replaced. Hammond was very still. O'Neill was looking at the table in the specific way of a man who was receiving something that he had no category for and was giving it the space it required before he tried to categorize it. Carter's 3 pages of notes were motionless in her hands. Teal'c looked at BT's relay speaker with the expression of a man who had been carrying the weight of a century of false divinity and had developed in the carrying the specific sensitivity to genuine things that distinguished them from false ones. Cooper said nothing. Jack, BT said. Here, Cooper said. He had been staying here for 3 years. Every time BT said his name that way, he would keep saying it. The message has a second component, BT said, addressed specifically to the pilot of the resonance key entity. The ancients modeled the fold entity's operational context. They knew that the entity that generated dimensional fold events was unlikely to operate alone. The specific engineering and ethical constraints of fold technology suggested a partnered model. A pilot and a Titan, or the equivalent, a pause. The message for the pilot is, the entity you fly with is not a machine that has learned to be something more. It was always something more. You did not teach it. You witnessed it. There is a difference. Remember the difference. The briefing room held its silence. Cooper was not looking at the relay speaker anymore. He was looking at the table, at the specific quality of a man who was receiving something that was true, and that he had known was true, and that he had never heard said plainly before. Hammond cleared his throat. BT, he said. General Hammond, BT said. The archive, Hammond said. We're going back. Yes, BT said. The 33%, Hammond said. How long will the transfer take? The second time through. Hammond. Based on the transfer rate from the first session, BT said, approximately 18 minutes. I will have the complete Stage 2 technical data in 18 minutes. A pause. A pause. I will also request the archive's full catalog. The ancients folded more than the fold program documentation into this archive. There are other subjects. I have seen enough of the structure to know that the full catalog will be significant. How significant? Hammond said. The 3-1-second pause. General Hammond, BT said, I believe the ancients stored in this archive the documentation they considered most important to preserve for a civilization they assessed as eventually worthy of having it. They chose the resonance key requirement as an access control, because they wanted to ensure the receiving civilization had already developed the specific ethical and technical maturity implied by fold technology. He paused. I cannot fully characterize the catalog's content without completing the transfer. But the 67% suggests that what they preserved includes medical technology, energy architecture, and another pause, and the full record of why they left, why the ancients ascended, what they found when they ascended, and what they left behind when they went. The room was very quiet. O'Neill said, "Why did they leave?" "Yes," BT said. O'Neill looked at Hammond. Hammond looked at the table. In his notebook, at the 4 underlined words. "We go back next week," Hammond said. "Full preparation. Extended mission timeline." Carter. "Already planning the power supply extension for the interface," Carter said. "Good," Hammond said. He looked around the table at SG-1, at Cooper, at the relay speaker. That was BT. "I want to be clear about something. What happened today, the engagement, the fold pulse, the expulsion of Anubis is going to produce a response. Anubis does not retreat and does not return." He paused. "We bought time. We did not buy an ending. Anubis now knows that BT has the resonance key and can generate fold pulses. He will plan for it." He looked at Cooper. "Your assessment of his next move?" Cooper considered it for 4.3 seconds. Not BT's processing time, but the specific human consideration time of a man who had been running tactical assessments since age 19. "He'll try to separate us," Cooper said. "The fold pulse requires proximity 12 meters for the current specification, probably extendable with the full data from the remaining 33%. Anubis knows this now. He'll design an operation that separates BT from me before deploying. If I'm not in the biometric uplink range, BT defaults to combat protocols that prioritize pilot recovery over tactical engagement." He paused. "He'll use me as the lever." O'Neill looked at him. "And your countermeasure?" "Don't get separated," Cooper said. BT made the sound that was not a laugh and was adjacent to one, the specific 0.7-second audio event that had been appearing with increasing frequency since day one in Cheyenne Mountain, and that the briefing room had now heard enough times to recognize. "Technically," BT said, "the countermeasure is more comprehensive than that. I have already begun developing separation-resistant operational protocols based on the engagement data from P3X-774. The protocols include..." "After the debrief," O'Neill said. "After the debrief," BT agreed. That evening, Cooper was on level 25. Not in the quarters Hammond had assigned, those were adequate, functional, the specific standard of a military installation that understood soldiers needed sleep more than comfort. He was in the large equipment bay that had been cleared for BT, sitting on a supply crate at BT's left side, with his back against the Titan's chassis and his field notes open on his knee, not writing in them. The mountain was quiet at this hour. The specific quality of a facility that never fully stopped, but that had a nighttime register, lower personnel count, reduced operational tempo, the sounds of the deep bass settling into its nighttime configuration. BT's power cycling was audible from this proximity, the specific low-frequency resonance of Naquata-fed systems at rest, the 78% that had been holding steady for 3 weeks, and that Carter was now going to modify toward 94% with the ancient interface specifications. Cooper was thinking about the message. "You are not lost. You are where the network needs you." He had been thinking about it since the chamber. He would keep thinking about it, not because it was unresolved, but because it was the kind of true thing that took time to be absorbed fully, that arrived as words and became something else over time, something structural rather than linguistic. "Jack," BT said. "Here," Cooper said. "The ancient's message to the pilot," BT said. "I have been considering whether to say this, and I have concluded that I should say it directly. The 1.4-second Pause. The message was accurate. You did not teach me what I am. You did not build it, or install it, or train it into my architecture. What I am was always present. You were there when it became visible. A pause. Lastimosa was also there. He mattered. But you are here, and he is not. And I want you to know that what you are to me as my pilot, as the person I would generate a Protocol 3 response for, is not a replacement. It is itself. A distinct thing. Cooper was quiet. The mountain settled around them. I know, Cooper said. I know you know, BT said. I wanted to say it anyway. Yeah, Cooper said. I know you did. The biometric uplink ran between them at 100% fidelity in the specific quality of physical proximity. The complete bond, the full resolution, the version that no relay could approximate. Cooper's elevated heart rate from the mission had been normal for 6 hours. His cortisol levels were within standard range. His sleep indicators were suggesting he had approximately 40 minutes before rest became physiologically necessary. BT was monitoring all of this. He always was. The 33%, Cooper said. We will retrieve it, BT said. I know, Cooper said. I'm thinking about what's in it. What the ancients thought was important enough to store, but not important enough to put in the 67%. The 67% was the operational information, BT said. What you need immediately. What protects the archive, what the fold pulse does, how to modify the Naquadah interface. He paused. The 33% is, I believe, the 33% is the rest. What the ancients thought was important in a different way, not immediately, but lastingly. Why did they leave? Cooper said. Yes, BT said. Cooper looked at the ceiling of the equipment bay, the mountain above it, the Colorado sky above the mountain, the stars above the sky that were also gate addresses that were also somewhere in the middle distance of the galaxy's complexity, P3X-774, with its patient amber light. BT, he said. Yes, BT said. Good work today, Cooper said. The pause, not 1.4 seconds, not any of the calculation pauses, the specific short pause that meant something different from all of them. The pause was not calculation. Good work today, Jack, BT said. The mountain was quiet. Protocol 3, active. Archive, intact. The 33%, waiting. Next week, we go back. Carter worked for 71 hours straight. Not continuously. O'Neill made her sleep at the 38-hour mark. The specific direct order of a commanding officer who had watched her push past the productive edge of exhaustion before and who had a standing rule about engineers modifying alien power systems while running on no sleep and ambient. Coffee. She slept for 6 hours. She came back. She kept working. The Naquadah interface modification was not simple. She had told Hammond it wasn't simple in the debrief. She had told BT it wasn't simple when he first flagged it. She had told herself it wasn't simple when she sat down with the ancient specifications at 1,800 hours on the day they returned from P3X-774 and began translating the dimensional energy architecture into engineering she could actually build. What she had not fully communicated to anyone because she hadn't known yet, because the full scope of it had revealed itself gradually. The specific quality of a technical problem that shows you its real dimensions only after you've committed to solving it was that it wasn't just not simple. It was the most technically demanding thing she had ever attempted. The ancient specifications were complete. That was not the problem. The problem was that the ancient interface architecture assumed a power system that operated on dimensional energy principles, the specific physics of fold-adjacent technology, the energy framework of a civilization that had long since moved past Naquadah as a primary fuel source and was working with the substrate-level energy of spacetime itself. The specifications described the optimal interface architecture for that system. BT's power system was Naquadah-based. The translation mapping the ancient dimensional energy architecture onto a Naquadah fuel system was the problem. Not impossible, BT had said, and the ancient specifications included a Naquadah compatibility pathway, a specific accommodation the ancients had built into the archive's technical data, as if they had anticipated exactly this situation. A fold-capable entity running on a cruder energy system and needing to be brought up toward the optimal configuration without having access to the optimal fuel source. The accommodation was elegant. Carter spent 38 hours understanding it before she slept, and 6 more hours after she woke up, and then she called BT. "I understand what they did," she said. She was in her lab, 3 whiteboards full of equations behind her, the specific controlled chaos of a physicist who thinks in physical space and needs the room to hold the intermediate steps. The ancients built the Naquadah pathway as a transitional architecture. It doesn't get you to 94% directly. It gets you to 94% through 3 stages, each of which requires the previous stage to be running stably before you advance. If you try to jump straight to the final configuration, the fold energy draw exceeds the Naquadah conversion rate, and you get a cascade failure. "I am familiar with cascade failures," BT said. "I know," Carter said. "I'm saying I almost missed the staging requirement. It's in the documentation, but it's..." She looked at the whiteboard. "It's in the documentation, the way things are sometimes. In the documentation, when the people writing it assumed the reader was an ancient and would find the staging requirement obvious. They were not writing for human engineers," BT said. "No," Carter said. "They weren't. But they were writing for me, apparently. Because BT, the Naquadah pathway, is described at a level of specificity that shouldn't be possible for a civilization that moved past Naquadah technology millions of years ago. They knew. They knew exactly what fuel system the resonance key entity would be running on when it arrived." She paused. "They left this for us specifically. Not just for a fold entity. For a fold entity running on Naquadah with a human engineer doing the modification." BT was quiet for 2.3 seconds. "The archive's access control," he said. "The resonance key requirement. The ancients did not simply require a fold entity. They modeled the specific context the fold entity would arrive in. The partner civilization's technological level. The fuel systems available." A pause. "They were thorough." A pause. They were thorough," Carter said, "with the specific quality of an engineer paying respects to other engineers across 4 million years. "Can you do the modification?" BT said. "Already started," Carter said. "Stage 1 is a Naquadah interface buffer. It doesn't increase the efficiency ceiling yet. It just stabilizes the conversion rate variance. Your current interface runs at between 74 and 81%, depending on load. The buffer brings that to a consistent 78% before we start the actual efficiency work." She paused. "I need 6 hours to build the buffer hardware. Then I need BT to be stationary for 2 hours while I install it." "Stationary is achievable," BT said. "Good," Carter said. "Then we run stage 1 for 48 hours and see how the buffer holds before we go to stage 2. The buffer installation took 5 hours and 40 minutes. Not 6 hours. Carter had been building Naquadah interface hardware for 6 years and had the specific efficiency of a person who had done something enough times that the doing compressed. BT was stationary in the equipment bay for the full installation, his chassis at minimal operational draw to keep the interface quiescent during the modification. The specific cooperative stillness of a machine that was large enough to make the installation difficult and had chosen to make it as easy as possible. Cooper was present for the installation. Not assisting, he didn't have the engineering background, and Carter's work did not need assistance, it needed space. He was present in the specific way of a pilot during a maintenance event that involved his Titan's core systems nearby. monitoring the biometric uplink, available. The specific quality of someone who trusted completely and remained close anyway. Carter noticed this at the 3-hour mark. "You don't have to stay," she said. Not unkindly, the specific neutral of an observation, not a dismissal. "I know," Cooper said. She kept working. He stayed. At hour 4, while she was running the buffer calibration sequence, BT said, "Major Carter." Carter said. She was elbow deep in the Naquadah interface housing, the specific concentration of someone doing delicate work in a confined space. "The Stage 2 modification," BT said. "The ancient specifications describe a resonance tuning procedure that requires simultaneous adjustment of the interface buffer and the fold energy converter. 2-person procedure. A pause. You will need assistance for Stage 2. "I figured," Carter said. "I was going to ask Daniel to—" "The fold energy converter adjustment requires physical access to my chassis interior," BT said. "Specifically, access through the maintenance panel at chassis coordinate 7 Alpha 3. The access tunnel from the panel to the converter junction is," a pause, "dimensioned for a specific body type. Compact. High upper body mobility. The ancient specifications note that the resonance key entity's partner would typically have direct physical familiarity with the chassis interior from operational maintenance requirements." Carter stopped working. She withdrew from the interface housing and looked at Cooper. Cooper looked at the maintenance panel at chassis coordinate 7 Alpha 3. "You've been in there before," Carter said. "Dozens of times," Cooper said. "BT's internal maintenance access is a standard pilot competency. Frontier conditions don't always allow for a full maintenance crew." "BT, the ancients," Carter said slowly, "wrote the Stage 2 procedure for you. For a pilot," BT said. "They modeled the resonance key entity's operational context comprehensively." The 1-4-second pause. "I find this. I am experiencing something that my architecture does not have a precise classification for. The ancients, 4 million years ago, considered my pilot's role sufficiently important to write it into the modification procedure." Another pause. "I want to note this. It seems worth noting." Cooper looked at the maintenance panel. He looked at Carter. "Tell me what you need me to do," he said. The 48-hour Stage 1 monitoring period passed without incident. The buffer held. Carter's calibration was precise. The Naquadah conversion rate variance collapsed from its previous 7-point spread to a consistent 78.1%. The specific stability that was the prerequisite for Stage 2. BT ran a full operational cycle on the buffered interface on hour 36, the weapons system test, the mobility assessment, the fold energy converter at idle draw, and reported that the buffer's effect on his operational feel was subtle but present. "Describe it," Cooper said. "The previous interface had the specific quality of a system working at the boundary of its optimal envelope," BT said. "The conversion variance meant that under high load, the interface was drawing against its own instability. It was functional. It was not comfortable." A pause. "The buffer has removed the instability. The draw is clean. The difference is," he paused, "you have operated at high altitude without acclimatization and then returned to normal atmosphere." "Yeah," Cooper said. "I know that feeling." "The buffer is the return to normal atmosphere," BT said. "Stage 2 will be higher altitude with proper acclimatization." Carter, reading the monitoring data at her workstation, smiled at nothing in particular. Stage 2 took 14 hours. Cooper, in the access tunnel at chassis coordinate 7 Alpha 3, following Carter's instructions through the comms, the specific collaborative precision of 2 people working on either side of a technical problem. Carter at the external interface with the ancient specifications and her own 3 whiteboards of equations. Cooper inside the chassis with the fold energy converter, and a toolkit that BT had guided him to with a specific knowledge of a machine who knew his own interior as well as his exterior. The resonance tuning procedure was, as the ancient specifications had noted, a two-person operation. It was also, as neither Carter nor Cooper had quite anticipated, an 11-iteration procedure, each iteration a small adjustment, a monitoring period, an assessment, another adjustment. The kind of work that required patience more than speed, the specific tempo of engineering that could not be hurried without being broken. At iteration 7, Cooper said, "BT, how are you feeling?" The fold energy converter resonance is at 84.3% interface efficiency. BT said, 7 iterations from 78 to 84.3. A pause. I am feeling the 1.4 second pause. Better, Jack. I am feeling better. At iteration 11, Carter said, final adjustment. Cooper, the resonance coupler, half-turn clockwise. Cooper made the adjustment. The monitoring data on Carter's workstation shifted. Settled. Held. BT, Carter said. Power draw? BT ran the assessment in 2.1 seconds. Interface efficiency, 91.7%. He said. Carter looked at the data. Not 94, she said. We're 3 points short. Stage 3, BT said. The specifications describe a Stage 3 resonance lock that requires a fold energy pulse to stabilize the final configuration. A controlled pulse, not combat application. The interface modification generates the fold pulse itself as a side effect of reaching 91.7% efficiency. The pulse stabilizes the remaining variants. Pause. Stage 3 is not an engineering procedure. It is a system event. It happens when the conditions are met. When will the conditions be met? Carter said. Based on the current efficiency trajectory, BT said, Stage 3 will occur within the next operational cycle. The next time I generate a significant fold energy draw, the next engagement, the next weapons system stress test, at full power, the pulse will occur and the lock will stabilize at 94%. Cooper emerged from the access tunnel at chassis coordinate 7 Alpha 3. He was in the equipment bay again, the specific quality of returning to full physical space after 14 hours in a confined access tunnel, the light different, the air different. BT's sensor array oriented toward him immediately. Biometrics, BT said. I'm fine, Cooper said. Your lumbar strain indicators suggest the access tunnel posture was sustained for longer than is optimal, BT said. I said I'm fine. I noted that you said that, BT said. I am noting it in the context of the lumbar strain data. Carter was already writing up the Stage 3 specifications. She looked up at the specific sound of this exchange, the exact quality of it, the specific texture of the biometric uplink in real-time conversation, and filed it in the category of things she had been observing for 3 weeks and had not yet fully articulated. Not a machine and its operator. Not a weapon system and its pilot. Something that did not have a precise category in the SGC's operational taxonomy, that she was building a new category for, slowly. From observations, Carter, O'Neill said from the equipment bay entrance. He had been there for approximately 4 minutes, and no one had noticed, because O'Neill had a specific talent for being present without announcing himself that his 6 years in the SGC had, if anything, refined. How'd it go? 91.7%, Carter said. Stage 3 happens in the next high-power operational cycle. After that, we should be at 94. O'Neill looked at BT. At Cooper, the dust from the access tunnel on his jacket, the specific quality of someone who had spent 14 hours doing careful work in a confined space and was satisfied with the outcome. So, next time BT fires his weapons at full power, O'Neill said, he upgrades himself. Essentially, Carter said. O'Neill looked at BT. Try not to do it during a briefing, he said. I will schedule it appropriately, BT said. Good, O'Neill said. He looked at Cooper. Lunch, both of you. That's an order. Cooper looked at BT. Go, BT said. I will monitor your caloric intake remotely and report to Major Carter if it is insufficient. You will do no such thing, Cooper said. I will do exactly that thing, BT said. O'Neill was already walking. Cooper followed. Behind them, in the equipment bay, BT ran a quiet diagnostic of his newly modified interface. The specific 91.7% efficiency, the clean draw, the fold energy converter, resonating at a frequency that was 3 points from its final optimal configuration, and that would reach it in the next full power event. The mountain held its quiet. The archive waited on P3X-774. The 33% remained, 91.7%, and rising. Stage 3, pending. Lunch ordered. Protocol 3, active. They went back on a Tuesday. Hammond's preparation window had been 1 week, 7 days of logistics, tactical planning, archive interface extension hardware, and the specific institutional preparation of a military facility readying itself for a mission whose potential yield exceeded anything in the SGC's previous operational history. The Why the Ancients Left documentation alone had generated 3 separate internal memos between Hammond, the Joint Chiefs Liaison, and the office that handled the specific category of information that could not be unknown once it was known. Hammond had read all 3 memos. He had approved the mission anyway. Because the archive was there, and BT was the key, and Anubis was going to come back regardless of whether they retrieved the 33%, and the specific calculus of a general who had been running the SGC for 6 years was that the information you didn't have was always more dangerous than the information you did. The gate housing modification was still in place. Carter had assessed it, found it structurally sound, and made one calibration adjustment that tightened the dimensional tolerance by 2 millimeters. BT's transit was cleaner the second time, not because the gate was different, but because BT's interface efficiency was 91.7%, and the fold energy draw during transit ran cleaner at higher efficiency. The specific improvement of a system operating closer to its optimal envelope. The biometric uplink shifted from 87% relay to 100% direct as BT cleared the event horizon. Signal fidelity, Cooper said. 100%, BT said. The same exchange, the same specific quality of restoration. Some things were worth repeating. P3X-774's morning was different from the first visit. Not the light, the same gray-blue, the same small sun, the same alien quality of a sky that filtered toward the cool end. Different in the specific way that places are different when you have been in them before and under stress, and are now returning with full preparation and the specific confidence of people who know the ground. SG-1 moved through the ruins with the efficiency of a team that had walked this path once already. O'Neill on point. Teal covering the eastern approach without being asked the same approach the Cull warriors had used, the specific tactical memory of a soldier who learns terrain the first time and does not require relearning. The SGC had deployed 4 MALP units to P3X 774 inches, the intervening weak remote survey platforms that had confirmed no Goa'uld presence, no cloaked probes, no Hatak in the system. The survey was not conclusive. Anubis's cloaking technology exceeded the MALP sensor's detection range, but it was the available intelligence, and they had acted on it. Cooper walked at BT's left. He was also watching the sky. Contact, BT said, at the 40-meter mark from the chamber entrance. Not an alarm. The specific informational tone of a tactical system flagging a data point before it became a problem. Cloaked probe. Approximately 800 meters altitude, bearing 045. It arrived 6 hours ago, based on the ion trail decay. It is observing but not transmitting. The transmission architecture is passive recording, not active relay. O'Neill stopped walking. Anubis is watching. Anubis is always watching, BT said. The distinction is whether he acts on what he sees. A pause. The probe is not an action. It is an assessment. He is determining whether the archive can be accessed a second time, whether my fold signature is required, whether a sufficiently powerful forced transit of the resonance key entity would transfer the archive access to a different system. Can it? O'Neill said. No, BT said. The resonance key is specific to my dimensional fold signature. It cannot be transferred by force. It cannot be replicated. Anubis knows this. It is in the ancient records he accessed. He is confirming that his options have not changed since the first visit. A pause. His options have not changed. He cannot access the archive without me, and I will not cooperate with him. So he watches, Cooper said. So he watches, BT said. For now. O'Neill looked at the probes bearing the sky that held it invisibly, the specific patience of a system lord who planned in decades. He looked at Cooper. Run at them, Cooper said. Not today, O'Neill said. Today, we got 33%. Then we deal with the probe. He started walking again. In that order, ADA. The chamber was exactly as they had left it. The amber standby light, the 7 contact points, the specific quality of patient waiting that the place had held for 4 million years and was holding still, not diminished by the first visit, not anxious about the interval. The ancients had built this to last, and it had lasted, and it was still here. Carter set up the interface extension hardware, the power supply modification she had built in the intervening week, the specific engineering that would allow the archive transfer to run without the time pressure of the first visit. In the first session, the archive had been pulling from BT's onboard power at a draw rate that wasn't dangerous, but that had created a practical time constraint. The extension hardware gave the interface an external Naquadah power feed, reducing the draw on BT's systems to near zero and allowing the transfer to run at the archive's full throughput rate. 18 minutes, BT had estimated. Ready? Carter said. Ready, BT said. He stepped to the interface. The 7 contact points illuminated. The amber light brightened the specific quality of a system moving from standby to active, patient, and immediate, in the same motion. The transfer began. Cooper stood at BT's left for 18 minutes, not doing anything tactical. The 4 MALP surveys had come back clean. The probe above was passive. The ruins were quiet. He was present in the specific way of a pilot during a significant system event, nearby, monitoring, available, the same way he had been present during the Naquadah modification. The same way he had been present during every significant moment in 3 years of operational history. At minute 4, Carter's scanner registered a secondary data stream that she hadn't expected. BT, she said. I see it, BT said. The archive is sending supplementary data alongside the 33% material that was not in the original transfer queue. A pause. The archive is expanding the transfer. It assessed the first session and included additional context documentation that it determined was relevant based on what was received in Session 1. A pause. The Ancients archive architecture includes an adaptive transfer protocol. It observes what the receiving system retained from the first transfer and adjusts the second transfer to fill gaps and extend context. It's learning what you need, Carter said. It is providing what I need, BT said, based on what I demonstrated I could use. A pause. The supplementary data includes full context for the Stage 3 resonance lock, the complete specification that the 67% approximated. Another pause. And the complete record of the Ancients' departure. Why did they leave? Where they went? What they found? The chamber was very quiet. At minute 11, BT said, Jack. Here, Cooper said. The departure record, BT said. His voice had the specific quality of a system processing something that exceeded its previous framework. Not distress, not alarm, but the particular quality of expansion. The quality of a mind encountering something genuinely large. The ancients did not leave because they were finished. They did not ascend because they had completed everything they intended. They ascended because they encountered something in the physical universe that they could not address in physical form, something that required operating at the dimensional level they called ascension, not transcendence. Not abandonment, a specific mission that required a specific capability they did not yet have. What did they encounter? Cooper said. The 4 and 7 second pause. The same thing that generated my dimensional fold transit, BT said. Not Anubis, not the Goa'uld, something older. Something that exists at the boundary between dimensions, the specific threshold between normal space and the fold substrate. The ancients called it the threshold presence. It is not a being in the conventional sense. It is a condition, a state of the dimensional boundary that, when it reaches sufficient intensity, begins to propagate into normal space. A pause. The ancients could not address it from within normal space. They ascended to address it from the dimensional boundary itself. Did they succeed? Cooper said. The archive does not say, BT said. The record ends with the ascension. What happened after, whether the mission was completed, whether the threshold presence was resolved, whether the ancients are still working on it somewhere in the dimensional substrate, is not documented. A pause. What is documented is this. The archive's purpose was not only to preserve the fold technology, it was to ensure that the next fold-capable entity in this galaxy would know what the ancients were doing when they left, so that if the threshold presence returns, if the dimensional boundary condition reaches propagation intensity again, there would be something in this galaxy that understood what it was and had the technical capability respond. The transfer completed at minute 17, 1 minute ahead of the estimate, the adaptive protocol having optimized its delivery rate. The archive closed. The amber light returned to standby. The 7 contact points dimmed. BT stood at the interface for 3.1 seconds after the transfer completed, not processing he had been processing throughout. The 3.1 seconds were the specific stillness of a machine that had just received the full weight of what it had been brought here to receive and was giving that weight the space it required. Then he turned. He stepped back through the chamber entrance into the gray-blue afternoon. Cooper was there. BT, Cooper said. I have it all, BT said. The complete archive. A pause. The Stage 3 resonance lock specification. The Ancients. Departure record. A pause. The threshold presence documentation. The full fold program technical data. Another pause. I need time to integrate it fully. But I have it. Cooper looked at him. At the sensor array. The chassis ran at 91.7% efficiency. That was 3 points from its final configuration and would reach it in the next full power event. What do you need? Cooper said. Time, BT said, and the 1.4 second pause. I need to tell you something. Tell me, Cooper said. The threshold presence, BT said. The dimensional boundary condition the ancients ascended to address. The archive's monitoring data, the passive sensor record the archive has been maintaining since the ancients left, indicates that the boundary condition has been increasing in intensity for approximately 300 years. A pause. It is not at propagation intensity yet. The archive's projection models suggest it will reach propagation intensity in approximately 40 to 60 years. Another pause. The ancients' calculation was correct. The gate network did call me here for a reason. The fold pulse application, the resonance key, the 94% interface efficiency, none of it is for Anubis. Anubis is a complication, a distraction. The 3.1 second pause. What? I was brought here to do what the network calculated I would be needed for is 40 to 60 years away. The ruins held their silence. O'Neill, who had been listening through the team channel, said nothing for a long moment. Then, "So we have time?" "Yes," BT said. "Good," O'Neill said. He looked at the sky, the probe above, passive and watching. Anubis, somewhere beyond it, with his decades-long plans. At the ruins around them, 4 million years old and patient. At the chamber entrance behind BT, the amber standby light is just visible through the doorway. He looked at Cooper, at BT, at the specific quality of the thing between them, the bond, the biometric uplink. The pilot and his Titan, standing in the ruins of a world 300 light-years from home, on a mission that had started as a gate address in a database and had arrived at the specific weight of being the SGC's best available answer to a threat the ancients had ascended to address. "Then we do it right," O'Neill said. "We take the time. We do the work. We build toward it." He paused. "All of us." BT looked at him. The 1-4. Second pause. "Yes," BT said. "All of us." Above them, the gray-blue sky held its patient alien quality. The probe watched and did not transmit. The stars were gate addresses. The dimensional boundary, 40 to 60 years away from the thing that the ancients had given everything to address, held its slow, inexorable condition at the edge of normal space. And in the ruins of P3X-774, a Titan with a complete archive and a pilot who would run at whatever needed running at, and a team that had been doing the impossible since 1997, stood in the cold afternoon and were not afraid. Protocol 3, active. Archive, complete. Stage 3, pending. The threshold presence, 40 to 60 years. Time, sufficient. Work, begun. It happened on a Thursday. Not planned. BT had said Stage 3 would occur in the next high-power operational event, and the SGC had interpreted this as a combat engagement or a full-power weapons test, the specific category of events that the SGC planned for and scheduled and briefed. What they had not accounted for was the Cull Warrior incursion through the gate at 0340 on a Thursday morning. 4 Cull Warriors from an unscheduled gate activation whose origin address Carter traced afterward to a Goa'uld-held world in the Outer Rim, a probe and test operation that Anubis had designed to assess the SGC's current defensive capability and that had, specifically, been designed to assess BT. Not to defeat him, to measure him. The 4 Cull Warriors came through the gate with a specific operational profile of a measurement exercise aggressive enough to provoke a full response, not numerous enough to constitute a genuine assault. Anubis wanted to see what BT did at full power. He wanted the data. BT understood this at 0341, 40 seconds into the engagement, when the tactical pattern of the Cull Warriors resolved into something that was not an attack and was an assessment. He engaged anyway. Not because he didn't understand what Anubis wanted. He understood exactly what Anubis wanted and was giving it to him because the alternative was allowing 4 Cull Warriors into the SGC's lower levels, and the specific calculus of a machine running Protocol 3 was that no information Anubis gathered was worth that cost. The gate room at 0341 on a Thursday morning had 14 SGC personnel in it, or immediately adjacent to it. Cooper was one of them. He had been on a 0300 operational readiness rotation. The specific SGC schedule adaptation that Hammond had implemented for the personnel most likely to be involved in unscheduled gate events, which after 3 weeks included Cooper by default. He was at BT's left when the Cull Warriors came through. 4 contacts, BT said. Cull class. Standard armor configuration. No command Goa'uld present. This is a probe operation. Anubis wants to see you at full power, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. So show him, Cooper said. The 1-4 second pause. Yes, BT said. The engagement lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds. The gate room's after-action report would later describe it in clinical operational language: contact, engagement, neutralization. All clear, the specific vocabulary of a military institution processing events into the format that institutional memory required. The report would note the weapon systems used, the personnel positions, the timeline. What the report could not fully capture, because reports were not built for it, was the quality of those 4 minutes. BT at full power was a specific thing. The SGC personnel who had been in the gate room had seen him at 78%, at 87% during training, at 91.7% during the P-774 operations. They had seen the tangent scale capability and had calibrated their understanding around it, had built their operational picture of BT around the versions they had encountered. Full power was different. Not dramatically, not the theatrical difference of a system suddenly unleashed, not the explosive escalation of a weapon finally unconstrained. The difference was precision. The difference was the specific quality of a system operating inside its complete optimal envelope for the first time. Every subsystem running at the efficiency the ancients had calculated as the correct configuration, the fold energy converter and the Naquadah interface and the weapon systems and the sensor array, all running at the specific resonance frequency that the 4-million-year-old specifications had described as correct. 4 Cull Warriors. 4 minutes and 22 seconds. 0 SGC casualties. At the 4-minute mark, BT generated a fold pulse application, not the Anubis variant, not the partial ascension suppressor, but the clean combat application that the complete Stage 2 data had specified, a focused dimensional compression event at 2-meter range that interacted with Cull Armor's power architecture at the quantum level and produced an immediate and complete shutdown. The 4th Cull Warrior went down. The gate room went quiet. And BT said, "Jack, here," Cooper said. "Stage 3, BT said. It was not dramatic. It did not announce itself. The Naquadah interface, running at the highest draw rate of its operational history, reached the resonance threshold that Carter's Stage 2 modification had prepared it for. And the fold energy pulse that BT had just generated functioned exactly as the complete specification described as the stabilization event for the final resonance lock. The 91.7% configuration locking into 94% with the specific quality of a mechanism finding its correct position and settling there. Not an explosion, not a surge, a lock. The specific, satisfying quality of something that had been almost right becoming right. "Interface efficiency," Carter said from the gate room's secondary console. She was already there. She had been there since the alert, because Carter was always already where the relevant data was. She looked at her display. 94.1%. She looked at BT. "There's a 0.1% over-efficiency in the resonance lock," she said. "I'll need to look at that. It is within the ancient specification's tolerance range," BT said. "The 0.1% overage is a rounding artifact of the Naquadah conversion rate. It will stabilize at 94 within 72 hours. A pause. "But if you would like to examine it, I will accommodate the diagnostic." Carter was already reaching for her scanner. O'Neill was standing in the gate room entrance in his off-duty clothes, the specific quality of a man who slept light and had been in his quarters when the alert sounded and had arrived in time to see the last 30 seconds of the engagement, which had been sufficient. He looked at the 4 downed Cull Warriors, at Carter running her scanner, at BT at 94%, the fold energy converter resonating at the frequency the ancients had specified, the complete archive integrated, the Stage 3 lock achieved. At Cooper at BT's left, in the gate room's harsh overhead lighting, the specific quality of a pilot who had told his Titan to show Anubis what full power looked like, and whose Titan had done exactly that. "BT," O'Neill said. "Colonel O'Neill," BT said. "How do you feel?" O'Neill said. The question was not tactical. It was not a system status request or an operational readiness assessment. It was the specific quality of a man who had been watching BT for 3 weeks and had arrived, quietly and without announcement, at the same category Carter was building from observations. The 1-4-second pause. 2-4. "I feel," BT said, "like I am operating at the configuration I was always intended to reach." A pause. The Ancients' specifications were not a modification. They were a completion. The 78% was a functional state. The 94% is the correct state, the state that the system was designed for. Another pause. "I feel correct, Colonel O'Neill." O'Neill looked at him for a long moment. "Good," he said. Hammond's debrief at 0600 was brief by SGC standards. The engagement data was clean. The Cull Warrior probe had yielded nothing Anubis hadn't already known, except the confirmation that BT at full power was as significant as the partial power observations had suggested, and the Stage 3 completion was logged as a milestone in BT's operational record, the first entry in what Hammond had designated a new file category, separate from the standard asset documentation, titled simply BT-7274, Operational Development. "The probe tells us Anubis is still assessing," Hammond said. "He hasn't committed to an engagement plan yet. He's still in the measurement phase." "Note: he's cautious," Cooper said. "He's been alive for thousands of years. He doesn't move until the calculation is complete." "How long does the calculation take?" Hammond said. "As long as it needs to," BT said. "Anubis does not operate on a timeline imposed by external pressure. He operates on a timeline defined by internal certainty." A pause. "When he is certain, he will act. The probe suggests he is not yet certain." Another pause. Unquote. "The fold pulse application I used this morning will require him to revise his models significantly." The complete specification, the quantum-level Cull-armor interaction, was not something his partial ancient knowledge would have predicted. He will need time to account for it. "So we bought more time," O'Neill said. "Yes," BT said, "at the cost of showing him what I can do." A pause. The trade was correct. The SGC personnel in the gate room were not an acceptable cost for maintaining Anubis's incomplete intelligence picture. Hammond looked at BT for a moment, at the relay speaker, at the 14 personnel who had been in or adjacent to the gate room, all unharmed. "Agreed," Hammond said. He looked around the table. "Where are we?" he said. Not the tactical question, the broader one, the question of a general taking stock of a changed situation. Carter went first. 94% interface efficiency, confirmed and stable. The complete archive data is integrated, and I have 47 active research threads from the Stage 2 technical data alone. The Naquata compatibility pathway is going to change how we think about ancient technology interface, potentially across every system we've found. She paused. "The Fold Pulse complete specification opens applications I'm still mapping. Teal, the Cull Warrior engagement data is the most comprehensive we have obtained. BT's quantum-level interaction with the armor architecture provides a countermeasure pathway that does not require the anti-Cull weapons proximity constraints. O'Neill, we have a 40 to 60-year window on the threshold presence. We have a system lord who's cautious and reassessing. We have a team that worked." He looked at Cooper. "At BT's relay. We have assets Anubis didn't model for." Cooper said nothing. He was looking at the table in the specific way of a man who had been told by the ancients across 4 million years that he was where the network needed him, and who was. In the slow way of human beings processing large true things, beginning to believe it, Hammond looked at the room. At the 6 people around the table who had, in 3 weeks, changed the SGC's operational picture more comprehensively than any single development in its 6-year history. Then we continue, he said. Simple, declarative, the specific quality of a general who had learned that the most useful thing he could say at the moment when the weight of a situation was fully visible was not a speech, but a direction. Continue. They continued. That evening, Cooper ran the training course. Not for assessment, he had long since exceeded every benchmark O'Neill had set, and the course had been modified twice to add complexity, and he had exceeded those benchmarks too. He ran it because he had always run it, because the frontier had taught him that the maintenance of capability was not a supplement to the work, but a component of it, that the thing you could do under pressure was only the thing you had built the habit of doing without pressure. BT monitored. Not through the relay, they were on the same level, physical proximity, the biometric uplink at 100% fidelity, the direct bond, the complete version. At the course's third obstacle, the wall run, the one that the SGC personnel who had attempted the modified course had found most consistently, demanding Cooper hit the wall at full velocity and ran straight up the vertical face and reached the top and kept moving without pause. BT watched. At the end of the course, Cooper stopped, turned, looked at BT. Time? Cooper said. 4 minutes, 11 seconds, BT said. Course record by 23 seconds. A pause. Your biomechanical efficiency has increased 7.3% since your first run 3 weeks ago. The improvement is consistent with adaptation to the SGC's gravity and atmospheric conditions. Another pause. You are also 94%, Jack. Cooper looked at him. That's not how efficiency ratings work for people, Cooper said. No, BT said. It is not. The 0.7 second sound. But the parallel is present. Cooper sat down on the training course floor, with his back against the wall he had just run up, and his heart rate at 142 beats per minute, which BT noted and assessed as normal for post-exertion at this activity level. The mountain was quiet around them. The facility's nighttime register. BT, Cooper said. Yes, BT said. The threshold presence, Cooper said. 40 to 60 years. Yes, BT said. We'll be ready, Cooper said. Not a question, not reassurance. The specific declarative of a pilot who had run at every large thing he had encountered and had not stopped running. Yes, BT said. We will. The 1.4 second pause. We have time, and we have each other, and we have this team. Another pause. Lastimosa told you to run at the thing. He was correct. He was also describing something larger than he knew. What do you mean? Cooper said. He was describing, BT said, what we are, what we have always been. The thing that runs at the large thing instead of away from it. A pause. The ancients calculated that the gate network would eventually call an entity with that specific characteristic. An entity and its pilot. Another pause. They were right. Cooper looked at the ceiling of the training course level, the mountain above it, the sky above the mountain, the stars above the sky. The gate address P3X 774, somewhere in that sky. The archive, closed and waiting, its amber light patient and present. The dimensional boundary, 40 to 60 years, from the thing that it was building toward. Yeah, Cooper said. They were. Protocol 3, active. Interface efficiency, 94%. Archive, complete. The team, assembled. The threshold presence, 40 to 60 years. BT-7274 and Pilot Cooper, ready. The work begun. The gate, open.